I've been thinking about this because we haven't done this show in a while. I feel like we should do one of those cute things where like we just start talking and it's like, oh, hey, Lucy, didn't you have a coconut the other day? Wasn't that crazy?
This is the cold open, by the way.
This is it. You already started it.
Okay,
See, right. I made it.
I love how you tried to yes and me with a story about a coconut. I was like, where do I go with that?
I'm trying my best. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Friends Per Second podcast. We are your Friends Per Second. I'm Jake Baldino. I'm joined by Ralph, a.k.a. Skillup, Gerard, the completionist, Lucy James of Gamespot, and I think I said my name already. This is episode 14, and it is our first episode of 2023. It is the first week of February 2023, and we got a lot to catch up on. How are you guys?
Sorry, we were away for so long.
Yeah, it was actually the plan. Okay, it was the plan to take, I think, the first 2 weeks off. And then I was like, oh, guys, I've got to go on vacation. I'm going to do like third week of Jan. And we meant to come back last week, but I was so sick last week. I was like, I can't do this. It would be impossible. When I recorded my video, like my Dead Space video, it took me like 2 hours to get this 15-minute script out because I was struggling. And my comment section was like, man, you sound like Kermit the Frog. What the fuck is up with your voice? I'm like, yeah, I'm really sick. So that is why this episode is entirely my fault because of one, my vacation, and two, my sickness. So
we tried to reschedule it last week, and we were all just like, I'm sorry, I'm doing something. I'm sorry.
We're
like
wrangling a barrel of monkeys. There's always like, I'm always like, I'm sad. And Gerard's always like, I'm busy. Yeah. And then like it all just collapses.
True.
Well, look, we did it. We got together.
We are here.
We're here, and the Fortnightly podcast is back and better than ever. You guys may have noticed you will notice that we've changed the format a little bit. We're taking more viewer questions. We've rearranged some things, but we're still talking the newest games. We've got Gene Park from the Washington Post. Talk to him. I'm pretty excited. But the biggest thing, the hottest thing, is The Last of Us on HBO. Have you guys been watching this?
Oh yeah.
Yes, I have.
We're all up. So I've seen the first 4.
Oh, okay.
So I've seen this week's already because I was in like a preview program. I don't know. So I am at the point now where I'm just like, I'm really glad episode 3 resonated with as many people as it resonated with me, because we're not going to spoil stuff. Yes. Don't worry. For people who maybe haven't dug in yet, but I fucking love it, man. I think they've nailed it.
Was that the one that you told me that you because like when you first saw all 4 episodes and the show wasn't out yet, you were like, I cried so hard. Was that the episode you were referring to? So
I was at Timur's place with Jake TLOU, who edits the show, and this one, not HBO's The Last of Us. And we decided to do all 4 in one go. And that episode happened, and I'm going to absolutely not spoil what happens, but it's a very, very beautiful, very well done episode of television. And there was a point in it, a character says something fairly innocuous, and I just went, oh no. Even though it wasn't anything really sad, I kind of twigged, I guess, what the whole thing about the episode was going to be. Tam just stood up and got his cat, Miko, and just put her on my lap and went, you need to sit with your auntie. She's gonna need you. And so it's just me. And then he took a couple of pictures as well, because there are points in that where I was just sobbing and just holding onto the cat, holding onto Miko for dear life. So as an emotional support animal, she did fantastically.
That's nice. Did he film you sobbing? I really would like to see the TikTok reactions. Lucy sobbing, stroking this cat, watching The Last of Us episode 3.
Luckily, I don't think he took any videos. I'll put the picture. I'll probably tweet the picture out actually, because it is quite funny. Because it's me just like biting my lip at this point.
Sure.
And luckily, I'm basked in a red light, so you can't see how red my face was.
Right. Nice.
But,
Were the boys in the room keeping it together? Were they doing these ones? Like,
oh, there was some manly fucking tears going on in that room. Like everyone got emotional. What about you guys? Did you guys cry?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I cried during everything though. I cried during Clerks 3, so like I'm easy. I'm an easy mark.
Oh yeah, no, it was it's hard to talk about that episode because I think there's actually a very interesting conversation about that episode specifically and how much it changes the story versus the games. Because I think to this point, the thing that has been celebrated about this series is how much it has really stuck to the game, but also riffing on it, right? It's expanding out the story and it's adding elements. But this episode is a fundamentally different tale that is, it reshapes what is essentially a minor character, but it reshapes them quite completely in ways that I think are good and bad. That it's hard to talk about without really being able to spoil the episode, right? It's tough. But I would say in general, the hallmark of the series to this point is that it is a brilliant adaptation of that source material, showing total respect to what it was, but also thinking about how it can add to it in meaningful ways. And I think it's almost, I think, the standard going forward. I mean, Arcane, I think, is still the best adaptation I've ever seen, but for different reasons. But yeah, man, it's just right now it's hitting the highest of high bars,
Especially when they do. I love it that not everything is line for line, but when they do, there were certain things that they did, when Joel falls asleep on the couch and then he wakes up like that, they do, like they mirror certain things. I do the Leonardo DiCaprio, pointing at the screen every single time.
Sure.
But
they don't feel like
so.
Sorry, you go.
No, they don't rely on them. Like it's not. And I think just the way they've handled it is so smart.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so, and like using the music, I think perfect. I don't think how you could have changed that at all. I think Bella Ramsey, it's amazing because the first time they started talking, I wasn't sure if they were Ellie. And then they went, Joel? And I went, okay, no. Okay.
Sure.
And then Pedro Pascal is, I mean, I love me some Pedro Pascal anyway. I think he's nailing. What is it? Do you see that TikTok where he says like, I'm your slutty daddy or something?
Oh my God, like, Jesus. Okay. Expect from Pedro, but okay, all right, I'm into it. Let's go.
But I think the two of them riff off each other so well.
I think so.
And I love it.
Yeah,
I like the practical nature, it seems like, of some of the clickers. There were some like real genuine scary moments and horror elements, like in the first episode, the second episode, and then like the makeup effects. Like a lot of that seems like it's actually real, and that helps, or at the very least, it's hidden well where they do use special effects, and that makes a big difference. I'm a stickler for stuff like that, so I love seeing it.
Yeah,
the design work is what gets me going. Every atmosphere, every setting, every place we go. It's obviously not the game, but it feels just like it. It does the exact same thing. And, like even that scene that we just talked about with them talking to each other and he's taking a nap on the couch, that room and the way that it is shot is not the exact same, but like it feels the exact same. It's the Dead Space remake of TV shows. It just knows how to do it.
And to Neil Druckmann's credit, he actually directed episode 2, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not a totally transferable skill set to go from video game creation to TV. Like, it's just not. And obviously a huge amount of overlap with his personal skill set because of the kind of games he's made, right? And how narrative led they are. And they are very much about like scenes and a script and whatever else. But still, to be able to step into an HBO television show and direct an episode at that level, huge accomplishment. You know what I mean? Like truly amazing. So massive kudos to him and all the people involved with it so far.
Craig Matheson, fucking Hangover to Chernobyl to this.
Yeah, there's something about I said this in a video, but there's something I can't put my finger on in terms of how he handles the like atmospheric sense of dread. It's almost like this slow, unsettling pit of your stomach build that Chernobyl really had.
Yeah.
And this has it as well. I think it's like the atmosphere, but also like the underlying theme of like a little bit of body horror to it in a way. Like there's just something there that he does that I can't put my finger on that really works for me.
I agree. Totally.
So, and it's also really nice to have like destination programming it's been, and we've already done our interview with Gene, and we're talking about, how mainstream games coverage is, and some places are still very much, video games aren't just for nerds in the basement. And then you get something like The Last of Us, which is getting critical and commercial success, not just from gamers, but just, the TV critics as well. And just kind of, I don't know, it feels like such a positive, and it's really cool to go on Twitter. I feel bad for the British people.
What's that?
And I am British because, Americans not chill about spoiling.
Oh, right. Sure.
So
we have a simulcast here in Australia. That's so weird. What's the delay in
It would be like 2 to 4 a.m. depending.
Oh, yeah. Of course. So simulcast, but everyone's asleep. Sorry, that makes sense.
So everyone's asleep.
Right. Well, then, I definitely stayed off social media in that little period when I knew the episode was airing before, like from when it was happening to when I could watch it. I was like, no, because as soon as I scrolled through Twitter, I just started seeing stuff immediately. I'm like, no, fuck this noise. I'm
just
out.
log off, you addicts.
That's it, man. Just follow the Jake Baldino school of like clicking off, man. Done.
Yeah.
That's nice. A life hack right there. Get off
Twitter.
But it
feels like, get off Twitter.com. Feels like we haven't had a show hit like this. A weekly show hit like this in a long time.
Especially for the gamers. I mean, for us, it's a big deal. Like, we haven't all collectively had this, it feels like. Like, nerds in general, sure. Everybody's excited about what She-Hulk is going to do next. But for video games specifically...
Like Dragon, but...
you guys are selling short the Halo show. Okay, thank you very much. We were all very excited week to week to watch that unfold. That was big. It was very exciting. Everyone loved it. It was a real... Why is everyone looking at me like that? Wait a minute.
Were you?
All I know is that he had sex. That's all I know.
You guys, none of you have actually watched the Halo show, have you? Oh my god!
I watched the entire fucking thing.
Oh, you did? I didn't think you did. Okay, right.
Yeah, I just haven't spoken to it about anybody.
I mean, what a stark contrast as well. Like, it just goes to show you. Obviously, it's different. You can't straight up one-to-one adapt Halo into a TV show, sure, but you can You can learn some things about why The Last of Us working so well and why Halo completely fucking didn't. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was a total catastrophe of a television show because it just had no interest in trying to recreate the things that people actually liked about that world and those characters and whatever else. Like, it just, we're going to do our own thing. Thanks very much. We'll just use it as a jumping off point, And it's like, oh man, it's such a... And the
Master Chief was so handsome. I kind of liked him. He was very cute.
Master Chief.
I mean, but he was so broody and just emo.
He was mean though in the beginning.
He was all the time. Fucking John Halo does not whinge. He just gets it done. Okay, like, it's ridiculous. So I don't know.
You're really not selling me on the Halo show.
No, I can't believe there's a season 2. I can't believe I have to watch season 2 of that. Oh god.
Well, speaking of season 2, we know we're now getting a season 2 of The Last of Us show, and Druckmann has confirmed that it will be based on part 2. So
I love what your voice did.
What happened there?
Oh my god! It's like you're already scared of the discourse.
Yeah.
Ralph, I watched your this week in gaming, this week in video games, and I think you said it best when you said, "I don't think everyone is ready for another round of discourse," and I certainly am not. I hope that, because to me, the discourse around The Last of Us Part 2 and the time that it came around was very similar to not similar discourse, but the same kind of nuclear hot moment feeling was like The Last Jedi and the last season of Game of Thrones, right? It just felt very, very contentious, and like there was no good argument to be made on either side because the attacking is just nonstop. So I hope for their sake they figured out a way to change some things and also go some new areas that won't be as nuclear as it needs to be, because I think everyone will just, there's no making everyone happy, unfortunately.
You know what I'm interested to see? The fact that the show is kicking off, it's a big deal, and HBO is prestige television in a lot of ways, and there's people who are ride or die for HBO. Our parents' generation, like, I know my parents will just show up for anything on HBO. They love it. So they're watching this. I can't wait to hear everybody's mom and dad talk about The Last of Us Part 2. That sounds even more traumatizing.
It's so true. So true.
Dad comes in like, well, Joel's like this, and it's like, oh, Dad, shut up. Like,
Dad. To be fair though, I fucking love HBO.
Yeah.
It's like my one adult treat.
Yes.
That's how I knew I made it as a fully functioning adult, that I had an HBO
Max
subscription.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
We have a streaming service here called Binge, and it's total garbage. It's trash. It maxes out at like 720p streaming quality.
So like
or
like Now TV in the UK.
It's so bad, but
and that's where HBO shit goes.
That's where they're the only ones who get your HBO, and that's how they get their market. That's how it's done. So I'm interested to see what you guys think about how you might adapt Last of Us, like season 2 or part 2 into a television show. Do you guys think it's how do you think they'll approach it? I guess that's the open-ended question. What are your thoughts?
I would love it if season 2 was just Abby. I going for chaos would love that. And then season 3 you bring Ellie back into the mix.
That'd be a good build. Where it's like
maybe not the whole season, but like a half season maybe of just like the Abby build, and then people would fucking lose their minds. It'll never happen.
Yeah, it's interestingly, like certainly one of the things that was interesting about the Halo show is that it had like the whole AB plotline thing, and it had this other character called Quan, and Quan's story was so boring and so disconnected from the main events. And obviously it's a really big jump to establish, have a character like Chief or whatever, and that be so established, and then all of a sudden to expect people to care about an entirely new character. And so I wonder how they'll manage that transition in season 2. Like, how do you take an entire season where it's built on all that and then get people to care about this new character in the world of television? Because also, don't forget, a lot of people didn't care about this character in the video game either. Like that was successful for some people, but it was not successful for many others. And I wonder how they'll do that, because that's going to be tricky.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it could be like it was hard enough, like it only landed for some people in a video game. So on a TV show, it's got to be an even taller order. I feel like they would have to build up more of the opening events that kick off the part 2, or something, to really develop a full emotional hook along for the ride. Like, I think players, to their credit, are more open to, as much as a lot of people didn't like it, people were still like, all right, let's see where this goes. I'll play as this person just because video game, like we did it with Raiden, and some people didn't like that, and we did it with Abby. But TV, to get people to show up every week, if they're not on board, I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah.
It really makes me feel like, I personally feel like The Last of Us Part 1 was very much lift and drop in terms of its readiness for television. You can just take that story, chop it up into 10 episodes or whatever, done. Easy. Not easy, obviously. Don't get me wrong. Like, obviously a lot more goes into it, but that makes a lot of logical sense. Yep. But I think The Last of Us Part 2 does not work on any level as a television show. I think structurally it doesn't work. I think its pacing absolutely doesn't work. I think also thematically it doesn't really work, because I found part 2 to be so oppressively bleak, relentlessly so, that it never came up for oxygen. And again, if you just had to watch 10 episodes of that straight up, that would be, I don't know that that's necessarily good television. I personally think it is.
The thing is, for me, that is.
Yeah, let me tell you, I've watched every season of Handmaid's Tale. No happiness.
I love bleak TV.
Okay, you're right. And obviously there's stuff like Sopranos, which is just, total suffering and all the way through. And of course, and Breaking, obviously.
I'm watching Breaking Bad for the first time right now.
Sure.
So I'm just like, I'm in that. I don't know. I think there's levity to Breaking Bad for sure. But if you watch something maybe like Leftovers.
I have not seen Leftovers.
I would say that's you could maybe make the comparison there, especially like the last season of The Leftovers is just incredibly bleak.
Right.
The first season too. Actually, also the second. Yeah, all of The Leftovers is very bleak. Sure. But I think the thing that it does well is that it balances human moments and like not even necessarily moments of hope, but just moments of what it is to be human. I'm sorry, that sounds so fucking wanky.
No,
but And I think if they don't lose that, and I think they've actually managed to do it a lot better in the show than you can maybe portray in a game where, you're not beholden by animation and stuff. You actually have two humans interacting. Doesn't matter how good the vocal performances are, but there's just something very tactile about seeing two humans interact. And so I based on the success of season 1 and how it's shaping up already, like I have faith that season 2 of following part 2 could work. I just don't want to have to be responsible for making that happen because that's going to be total. But
yeah, definitely. And
I say make it all AI. That way no one gets in trouble.
Have you guys seen the Seinfeld
make
thing?
It all
so good. Okay, if anyone's missed this, there's this like AI generated Seinfeld thing that's on Twitch right now. Where
I have been watching it all week long, and I don't know why.
It's so funny.
Don't know why.
It's so funny.
They're coming for our jobs, man.
They really are. They definitely are. But yeah, no, I think, and also poor whoever they cast as Abby. Oh my god, can you imagine? Yeah. There's gonna be some actress who probably isn't connected to the world of video games, and then she's gonna get this role, and then Neil's gonna have to sit her down for the talk, and he's gonna be like, "Do you still want this role?" And she's like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Are you sure you still want this role?" It's gonna be very tough, but yeah.
Well, tune in next time. I don't think we're going to do like a play-by-play for the podcast, right? But maybe by the end of the season, we'll definitely check in hardcore.
See if we can get Neil on.
Yeah, Neil, would you be interested in coming on the show? That'd be pretty wild. Come on, have a chat. Tell us how you plan to adapt season 2.
Yeah, just give us all the juice, the tea. Right. I don't know.
The tea. I mean, no, tea means like gossip, right? Yeah. Like, hey sis, what's the tea?
Sure.
I don't know. He can give us tea if he wants.
Well, speaking of tea, let's move on over to a little bit of change of pace with a viewer question. We're taking viewer questions at the email. Ralph, what is the email?
contact@friendspersecond.com.
Yes, shoot us questions. We'll take them, and just good way to break up the show, freshen things up. So this question is from Nikki D, who asks, "What criteria do you use to decide where to get a game, like platform-wise?" Gerard, I definitely want to start with you.
Yeah.
PlayStation, and it's for that dumb thing of it feels more fun to get a platinum than it does to get a bunch of achievements with no button. At the end of your journey of completing a game, you are given a platinum trophy. And personally speaking, I think the PlayStation consoles have always had the best controllers. They've just always been my favorite. But yeah, I generally try and go for PlayStation, unless, I hear that the port is just not in good shape, or the PS4, PS5 version is just abysmal. I'll try and go to the platform that has the most clean, working, non-buggy mess version, I guess. Mm-hmm. But by default, I tend to go PlayStation. What about you, Ralph?
I mean, I just default PC every time. I mean, because I think also I've almost by accident, I think I've cultivated like a PC audience. Not really. That was never the plan. But I just always prefer playing on PC in terms of customization. Obviously, I have high-end hardware as well, so I know that I can run it and it'll look the best it can possibly look. I like being able to provide that service to my audience as well, being like, does this port suck? Spoiler alert, probably yes. 9 times out of 10, the answer to that is probably yes. But I like that, I certainly, looked at, I came up watching Total Biscuit and whatever else and really admired the way he'd sort of focus on that. And I just PC feels very comfortable to me. And also I don't anything with I play a lot of shooters. I hate playing shooters on a controller. Absolutely hate it. Cannot stand it.
Makes sense.
And so that also is one of the reasons why I default to PC whenever I can. One funny thing I'll tell you about PC though is that review code very often comes in later for PC than for consoles. And so often I will have to review a title on console purely because they're like, oh, the review code for PC doesn't come out till like the day of or the day before release. And I'm like, oh, fine, I'll have it on PS5. You know what I mean? That's pretty much the only time that I will play games on consoles now, when I can't get a PC review code.
I'm usually my thing is that the way that I prefer to be playing games is on the couch. So I will opt for console rather than PC most of the time, because I work from home a lot. Like I do go into the office, but if I'm here all day in front of my PC, the last thing I want to do is kind of, okay, switch tabs, we'll play a game here now, but I'm still in the same emotional mindset because I've been working all day, right? And so to me, it kind of separates the end of my day is looking from my medium screen to my big screen. But big screen has, I've got a footstool over there. My couch is really comfy. I usually get a little glass of wine going. But in terms of an actual platform, I agree with Gerard that PlayStation, like if you're trophy hunting, whatever, just like feels cleaner. I'm in a place now where at the beginning of this console generation, I would have defaulted to PlayStation. However, as my repetitive strain has gotten worse, I've noticed I am noticeably worse if I play on a DualSense. So I'm actually kind of swapping the other way, and playing a lot more on Xbox because I have an Elite Series 2, and that is a beefy boy, and it feels better in my hands, my old crone hands.
Yeah, makes sense.
Did you guys get a DualSense Edge yet, by the way? Did you guys get one of those?
Oh, no, because I want something with more than a 4 fucking hour battery life.
Yes. 4 hours is pretty rough, I must say.
For $200, it's
unacceptable.
Shameful.
Not good, unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Looks nice. And I really like it. Looks nice, and I mean, with all the bells and whistles, yeah, sure, but I can't justify that.
The case is really nice. It's really hard.
Oh.
But yes, it is a lot to spend on a controller that only lasts 4 hours or less.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I will say that I am sometimes drawn to playing a game on PlayStation because I like the DualSense features. But I'm a mess. I play wherever. It's like sometimes a review code shows up for one place. I'm like, I have no allegiance. My home life is in shambles because my desk is over here, and I like playing on the couch like Lucy, but I hate like using a PC on a TV. Sometimes it just doesn't play nice, and PCs also just annoy me. I play mostly on PC, but their existence annoys me.
Steam Deck though.
Steam Deck has also made it more attractive again, where I can bounce back and forth, and I really like that flexibility. I'm kind of like lately I've been like review code sometimes just brings me on PC. I tend to play a lot of third-party games on Xbox, and then the first-party games on PlayStation generally. But when it's a game that I want to play after work time or something I get to later on, I look up the Digital Foundry review and see like where it fares a little bit better.
True.
And jump. And I'm not like a frame counter, but I'm still ultimately like, I'm like, well, I still have the choice, so I should take advantage. You know, like I'm privileged enough to choose between and go, what will I use today? You know, so
is that the voice you put on? Is that
voice?
Where will I play my video games?
You know, it's funny, Jake. At my house, I have a PC in my living room that's just for VR. For me to play Oculus games and meta games now. I apologize.
Don't apologize to Zuck. He doesn't deserve it.
Oh, I'm apologizing to the audience for not getting it right. The Zuck can suck a duck. But what I will often do is I will use my VR PC as a gaming console for all my capture stuff. So I still play PC games with a wireless Bluetooth Xbox controller on my couch, because there is something fun about sitting down in your comfortable zone in a big beautiful couch. Yeah, so you know what's up. You got
it right there that I used to.
Yeah.
Oh hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, it's great.
You know what I want, but I can't buy it. I can't have it in my house.
A Nerf Gallahorn?
No.
Oh wait, sorry. That's
a giant cardboard hot dog
right there. Sorry, I distracted your point. Sorry, go on, continue.
No, you know those lap keyboard and mouse combo things. You have one?
Yeah, I've got one.
He would. I've
got one in my.
I can never get into it.
Dude, that is exactly it. Because I sit on my couch and I've got this thing, and
I can't get into it. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the least reliable piece of tech that I have in my house. But it does the job. Like it does the job, and it's also really expensive. This is like $600 or something, by the way. Australian.
Are you joking?
No.
You get like the Rocat one?
It's a full mechanical keyboard with like a mouse
pad.
And it's like $600 US, which I think is it's probably $399 US. Maybe don't quote me on that, but yeah, that's it.
Why don't you just get a mouse and keyboard and stick it on a plank of wood?
Well, the good thing about this is that actually this is magnetic here. Like, well, hang on, you can see it. This stops the mouse from going away.
Okay, that was pretty sick. Okay.
Yeah, but you're right. I could do that. I totally could do that. But this is just what I have. So, you know.
But are you like no scoping demons and Doom with that? Like with that setup? Or
well, it's like when I don't care about aim, I play over there. But when I care about properly aiming, I always play here at my PC because you can't really get full motion on the mouse, like all that sort of stuff.
You gotta get
all the big movements.
Range of movement.
Yeah.
I was that guy in college that had because I worked at Best Buy, I had like 2 or 3 50-foot HDMI cords running from my dorm room to the living room so I could play Left 4 Dead in front of all my friends because LAN gaming wasn't really a thing at the time. And so everyone would come over to my place and they would just watch me play Left 4 Dead, and there's something fun about just having that PC experience in a couch and living room area.
Yep.
I have the Steam Link app is on my TV. Nice. So before I got my Steam Deck, I would and it uses the same network as well. So it's pretty good.
Very good. Like, that Steam Link app, it's very good. Yeah. Steam Link in general.
And so I would just play on my TV.
Yep.
That's great.
Yeah, get a controller.
A glimpse into our home lives. Thank you, Nikki D, for that question.
Thank you.
Let's move on over to video games. It's time to talk about games, guys. So the release list for the week, I just want to rattle them off real quick. We have One Piece Odyssey, Fire Emblem Engage, Forspoken, Dead Space Remake, Hi-Fi Rush, Season, A Letter to the Future, and also I want to add in one more, the GoldenEye re-release.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So starting off first, Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is one that I believe, Ralph, you jumped into. You did a whole video on it. I didn't expect that.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, I am able to review Nintendo titles now, which I'm really happy about. And this was actually one that I was quite interested in because I really enjoyed Fire Emblem Three Houses, even though I didn't get a chance to finish it. As I said, I put about 25-ish hours into that. Then I had to step away purely because I'm busy. But I was really... Hang on, there's a mosquito. He's gone.
Get him.
He's gone. He got away. But yeah, really, really enjoyed that because it had a really great mix of story, of characters. Its tactical combat felt very grand and epic because you kind of had these battalions at your back when you were initiating combat as a unit. It had the whole kind of like Persona social thing going on. It was set in Garreg Mach, which was like a monastery, and it had this whole sort of school life thing going on. And I went to a Catholic boys' school, so I very much vibed with that. And it's just a lot of things just really clicked for me with that title. So, but didn't get a chance to finish it. And then I was like, cool, Engage is coming along. Really pumped for this. Let's have a look. I really expected it to be more Three Houses. And to be fair, I did not do my research before. I just sort of was just going in quite blind. Turns out it's definitely not Three Houses. It is a very, how would you say? There were quite a few complaints that Three Houses was far too focused on the social side of things. And this is a response to that. It really strips out all of the social sim persona stuff that was the hallmark of Three Houses. And it really keeps things focused on the combat. A lot of people, it must be said, the Fire Emblem community, generally really happy with this one. Most of them hardcore Fire Emblem fans who have been playing it for a long time are like, yes, this is what we wanted. You're back to basics. Love it. But I think in Three Houses actually created quite a few new Fire Emblem fans. It really opened up quite a bit. And those people, generally speaking, are a bit disappointed with Engage because it feels like a big step back. It feels much more narrow. Its story really sucks. Like I think even people who like the game are a bit like, the story's a bit nuff. The character moments are a bit light on as well, the central conceit of the game is that you can sort of summon heroes from previous Fire Emblem games, like Roy and Marth and these sort of things, and they become these avatars that fight alongside you. But they feel like a really wasted opportunity because they don't really say much. They're kind of just like, they're almost like stat sticks, which is a bit of a bummer. They look great. They're really well animated in combat, but they don't go much further than that. Look, it's a good video game for sure. I ended up recommending it because I think there's plenty in the package to appreciate. I think my review, a lot of people were like, oh, this doesn't sound like you recommend this. But I'm like, well, it's really not a case of I don't recommend it. It's just a case of I thought Fire Emblem Three Houses was so much better. But this is still a decent enough game, And if you're into Fire Emblem, especially if you're a long-term fan, then, there's a very good chance you'll enjoy this. So have you guys played Fire Emblem games in the past? I'm guessing, Gerard, you must have, being a Nintendo fan.
I've played my fair share, but
Sure.
I haven't really. I tend to avoid them because of completion.
Right.
I'll play the first few hours, and if the story gets me, I'm in. Like Three Houses is probably aside from the original Fire Emblem game that I actually beat all the way through. But yeah, I don't know. There's only so many hours in the day to finish so many games, right?
Yeah.
I did a history of Fire Emblem video a couple weeks ago. And until I started working on that video, I had no idea just how many of those games never made it to the West at all.
Yes.
And so, Ralph, do you when you were playing Engage, were there just moments where you're like, I don't know who the fuck this is?
Oh, no. That was the whole moment all the time. As I said, because I only dabbled in one or two Fire Emblems in the past on the DS, and then I played Three Houses.
Awakening was great, and that was huge in the UK when that came out, and so that's the one I played. That's my jumping off.
My knowledge of Fire Emblem comes way more from Smash Brothers than it does from Fire Emblem. That is how I know Fire Emblem characters. Great. So, no, that was very much the case. But also, I think that was part of the reason why it was a bit disappointing, because I wanted them to introduce me to these characters, to tell me a little bit about their story, to have some rapport with those heroes. And I understand why they didn't. And they do some things, by the way. There are some paralog missions that you can go on where you would do a certain battle and it's relevant to one of the emblems, and they tell a little bit of story about their thing, but it's very light on, and it's absolutely not enough to get you truly invested in those characters and that world. And you don't finish that game thinking, oh, I really want to go and learn more about Fire Emblem lore as a result of that. You don't. You're just okay, well, those were just some characters that I met, like the others, no big deal, So yeah.
You should try Fire Emblem Warriors, the newer one, Three Hopes, because you get the social sim aspect, but then it's about killing a bunch of people.
I heard it's the Dynasty Warriors style one, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And it works, especially if you're familiar with Three Houses. It's a cool way to. I didn't play the previous Fire Emblem Warriors, but I played the newer one, and I liked it. It was cool.
Sure. No, it's I've heard that's good. I would like to jump into that one at one point. But yeah, it's a perfectly fine game. As I said, I recommend it, but it left very little impression on me. I have no desire to go back and play more of it, and it's just that's a video game that I played this year. That is how I will park that one, as I recall it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's funny that you say that. A game that didn't leave any impression on you, really. Forspoken.
Fucking hell.
On our list.
Let's go.
Who's played it? Jake, I know you're playing. I've been playing.
Yeah, I have not.
I've stopped.
Stopped.
No, dude, I was dual wielding that with Dead Space, and at the time, because I was of the four of us, I was the only one who had pre-release code, and I was like, I owe it to the friends per second to keep playing this game.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And then Jake, you said you got code, and I was like, I'm done. I'm fine. The onus is not on me anymore to talk about this game.
Yeah. So the whole thing with the review code, they didn't give out a lot, and I got one right before the game dropped, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
So I had to binge. Oh no, No, I didn't get one. I started playing on day one like a crazy person and just had to binge as much of it as that I could for a couple of days. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not really hot on it. I don't really know where to start.
Just before we went live, I was scrolling Twitter, and Gene actually retweeted the Famitsu review of it came in, 9988, so it got it like a 35. Or like, oh, that math doesn't add up, but it got it like a 35.
That's so interesting. I think there's something to be talked about with regards to the steps of this game. But anyway, I think we should come back to that because that's a really interesting point to touch on.
So, I mean, where do you even start with it? It's
you know what it feels like. I mean, you know what it's hard for me to be mean.
No, that's the thing is that I don't hate this game.
No, I don't think it's like a disaster.
I don't love it, and I think the fact that it elicits zero reaction from me is maybe worse than both of those.
Yeah,
like it just I went away and I started playing it. It is the narrative is so heavy-handed in certain ways and then completely obtuse, I feel, in others. So for example, at the very beginning of the game when you're playing as Frey, you're in New York and
it's like heavy rain. It just reminds me of heavy rain. It's just like shitty, weird city.
There are just like really weird moments where the game refuses to tell you stuff and it hides key stuff away in the archive. So there's a point in the beginning of the game, for example, where Frey's in court, and instead of the judge giving exposition, right, saying Frey, you've been doing this, this, and this, there's a table in front of you, and the game makes you individually select an image of Frey as a baby being found by a police officer outside the Holland Tunnel. That's how you get her backstory. The next is her rap sheet. That's how you get the rest of her backstory. And then something else, a newspaper article or something. And then it does stuff like that. There's another point in the game where the Tantas, or these people who are
powerful beings
who are fucking up Athia, the realm, and instead of a character giving you maybe a bunch of interesting quests to dole out the plotline, like what exactly happened with these people, what the break is, you go into a library and you have to individually go around, pick up books. Frey will give you one line, but then you go into the archive and it's all written out for you, like the whole backstory, like all the exposition, everything you fucking need to know. And it's just like, why? Yeah. Why are you doing that? Like,
it does it a lot. Like it'll like after you finish a conversation, it'll give you a prompt to pop up your archive or your journal to then look at that, where it's something you just heard about, but it gives you way more of it, but none of it matters to what you're doing anyway.
It's so weird. And the thing that I actually kind of really enjoy the way that the big thing that was kind of marketed about it is like the parkour, the free movement. You hold circle and just like zip around the place. I actually kind of enjoy that. It's fun. It's, you're just freewheeling around. It's great.
Yeah.
The characterization though is so weird. And I was doing the quick look over Giant Bomb, and Tam and I were talking about it as we were playing, but it's like Frey as a character is written in such a way that she's really embarrassed about the world that she's been put in. And this game is so weird because it's made by Luminous. There is so much weirdly Final Fantasy 15 specifically DNA in it. Like there are points in it I was like, oh yeah, you could put this in a Final Fantasy game, people would fucking losing their minds over it. And that's because Final Fantasy has an element of earnestness, right? There is a believability to these good boys walking around this world, and they're talking about the most ridiculous shit, but because they believe in it, you believe in it. And your look into this world is Frey. And she's just so negative about everything. And she's, there is some of the language in it is like very, oh, have you heard a real person speak before? Right, people don't talk like this.
She's got a real potty mouth.
Well, not even that. She's just like, I did that, like Marvel-ification.
Just like a real criminal from New York City would sound.
Yeah. But the thing is that on the flip side, you have a character who is written perfectly for the setting that he's in, even though he is also a stranger to this world, and that is Cuff.
Right.
Cuff is genuinely, like, I really enjoy that character. I think he's really well written, despite the fact that he's a fucking bracelet. He's, like, well written. He reminds me a lot, and I know I just said Marvelification as kind of an insult, but I think he reminds me a lot of Vision. He's very stoic.
Voice.
Very similar sounding voice. Very like playful way of being. I'm I'm better and I'm more learned and we should calm down and do what I say. But he still has jokes. And it's that contrast that I think really highlights issues this game has with its narrative. I think it does fray dirty in a lot of ways. I also think voice acting wise, some people were just given wildly different direction than other people. Let's just put it that way. It's so uneven. It's wild. But at the same time, I'm playing it and I'm just like, this is a podcast game. I'm just gonna zip around. Combat is like fine. It's spells and shit, and I love spells and shit. It's just it's a weird game. It's a weird game.
I'm curious if the Japanese version of the game is better simply for its narrative and like performance and dictation, right? Like I
wonder.
Cool, because a lot of people that I talk to who have been playing Forspoken, they kind of treated it like early Persona 5, where they were like, oh man, the dub I just couldn't take. But if I switched to the Japanese, I loved it.
I haven't tried. I might actually try that. But also,
because also I think from the clips that I have seen, we bring like it's such a specific way of talking that is it really just sort of like grates, like just the lines themselves and the delivery of those lines. So often you're just like, oh god, no, stop, right? And so I think if you were to just listen to that in a different language and just focus on the words themselves, your imagination could then apply the tone that works for you. You know what I mean? So that actually does make sense.
You know what?
Yeah.
I started playing Crisis Core, and I started playing it in English, and I was like, I think I'm gonna change it to Japanese. I need
sure.
a little,
It's
and I think
a
it might be
shame.
the same thing.
It's such a shame because Crisis Core, as someone who loved the original on the PSP, and I do love Reunion, I just am not the biggest fan of the voice directing in Reunion. It's like they chose to not do anything remotely even close to the original. They just said, let's take the original and toss it out the door. So a lot of these great, reverent, humble, like good boy moments with Zack just get lost because the voice direction just wasn't there. And by that logic alone, like I think Ralph's right. Like I think there might be something there to how the voice acting might just have kind of torpedoed itself in a way.
It's interesting. Final Fantasy 15 had some really uneven voice acting as well. And also just in terms of the mix of it, like it didn't sound right sometimes. It's just the way that some of the voices would come in and whatever else. But then you contrast that with something like Final Fantasy 14, where the voice acting there is incredible, right? They just totally nailed it. So I wonder if Square's just working with the wrong people with some of the, voice acting stuff, and it all needs to be through that British studio that they do with Final Fantasy 14.
There's just a disconnect somewhere. I don't know what it is, because it's like the gameplay, the fact that like it dumps all that lore on you just for the sake of like, we made all this lore. Read it in our little in-game journal. The world, the city that they built, like no one in that city is compelling.
The city is dead,
it's
man.
Weird.
It's just that big white. It just looks like really like plain, not marble, but just like almost like concrete. Yeah. Is that the city I'm thinking of? Yeah. Is that the one? Yeah, okay, right. I've seen it.
Beautiful from an art direction standpoint, but it's empty.
Yeah, okay,
the thing that gets me about that city is that, like, at least to the point where I was playing in the game, Frey's not allowed to use her powers in there, so you have to walk around normally. And I think a lot of it would be forgiven if you were zipping around, because you're fast as fuck, boy. You're not looking at there's a lot of pop in as well in that city of like people just randomly popping in, and I don't think you would notice that. And I think you would forgive it a lot more if you were allowed to use your powers, but there's some random story reason, even though they see her use her powers very early on, and then they still don't let you use your powers in it.
And then it has all the, so it has like lore for the sake of lore, just like for no reason. It has open world for the sake of open world, where it's so big. The world is so big And I guess it's because you run fast, but like
There's a lot of shit in there too.
It's filled with stuff, like it's filled with your typical open world trappings, which I'll admit I'm very like cynical towards that. But in this game specifically, more than a lot of other games, all the stuff in the open world to like, oh, go click on that to reveal this, or go get that to get that. It felt so made up and bullshit. Like last minute they were like, it's an ancient tome. It's an ancient tome from here, from hitherto, and that'll give you powers. And it just felt so cynically done that it just alienated me.
Yeah. My theory on that sort of stuff is, well, my thoughts is like, I think it's something like Xenoblade, right? And Xenoblade is a massive open world that is full of really generic ass side quests. We're talking like, go and kill 5 monkeys. Oh, cool. You've killed 5. Go and collect 5 fruits off the ground. It's like MMO level shit in a video game released in 2022 or whatever. I'm still playing through Xenoblade 3 slowly, by the way. But I don't really care about that stuff because the rest of the package is delivering for me so much. And also that stuff is very optional, you know? It's not a focus of the game. Where that becomes a challenge, I think, is when the game structure directs you towards that and there's no way around it. So my question is, does Forspoken force you to do all of that boring ass shit, or can you just totally ignore it and just focus on the beeline?
I was beelining.
Yeah?
Yeah, somewhat. Somewhat.
I would do like each one. It also, like, I don't think I've ever played a game that pulls you away from the game so much. Did you notice this?
Oh man. Like you're talking about, like you'll walk 10 feet and then it fades to black and then there's a cutscene and then they talk and then they just stand there and then there's a long pause and you wait for it to go back to gameplay and then you're still waiting and then you can walk.
The fades to black are so egregious. They are wild. It fades to black all the time. And there are so many, especially when you're out in the open world and you're getting, it doesn't do an elegant job of like slowly introducing you to the side content. It's you go past it, pause, tutorial appears on the screen, here's a way to do it, and then just tapping through stuff. And it's inelegant is probably the way I would describe it. It just takes you out of the experience to tell you stuff. That's the crux of the game. I'm going to take you out of this game to tell you stuff because we haven't figured out a way to deliver it properly as you're playing it.
And it's a shame because like I like running around the world. It's pretty exciting. It's very fast. It's not perfect, but it's cool. The combat also, there's something there. There's some cool ideas to it.
Combat looks fun.
Yeah.
It looks very lively and chaotic. Yeah.
You're casting with both triggers. Yeah. And as the game goes on, you get access to different powers, and the same with traversal. First, you're just running. Then eventually you can run up walls a bit. Then you're like lassoing yourself across. Eventually you unlock that. Late game spells, you can like cruise across water. Like there is stuff there, but then it has like the combat can be cool, but then it has you're fighting a lot of enemies that are just like drab and they blend in with the background, and they're just small enemies that are not very exciting to dodge or target or fight. And there's so much of that. But then when you're fighting one big enemy one-on-one that takes up like a big part of the screen, that's where it feels like it's really good. Even if the dodge is awkward, it's like using those spells is cool. So it's just like every drawback to everything. But
it's funny because I actually found the same thing when I was playing through the preview build. I was like, this combat's pretty cool, but it's not really working when you're fighting the small dudes. But when you fight a big dude and you can really like settle into some combos and start building some synergies, like it was good. That was the part that really clicked for me. So I'm curious though, do you guys feel as though all of the dunking on social media about the dialogue in this game, is the overall game as bad as people have made it out to be? Like, is it that terrible in terms of its dialogue or not?
No, I think it's like a mid game. I don't think it's like the worst game I've ever seen.
Sure.
A lot of the complaints are like a lot of the issues I have with it also kind of just remind me of like older, cheesier games. Like even like the start stops to gameplay and like the interruptions and stuff. Like I feel like I used to see that a lot more with like PS3, Xbox 360 games, and I didn't care. I was having a great time. But I don't know. It's just fine. I think there's going to be some people that really like it. And, if there's a little girl that thinks Frey is cool, That's cool. I like that her last name is Holland because she was found in a Holland tunnel. I think that's really creative and just silly. And the Holland tunnel looks nothing like it does in real life.
That rendition of New York looks so cursed. Like it looks so fucked up.
No, the new criminals that like jump her that she works for are like they look like Def Jam Vendetta characters. They're like hip hop. We're the hip hop girls, and it just like
Japanese developers like so this is what a New York criminal looks like. Of course, you know.
I think I agree with Jake. It's just just mid, but if you find value in it,
it's
there's value. There is value in everything, but if you find lots of like in there, then more power to you.
It's definitely. It seems like it's bombed pretty hard for Square. Like it was nowhere near top seller lists on Steam on that opening weekend. Outsold by Hi-Fi Rush, which is A, half the price, and B, on Game Pass. And that when I say outsold, I mean outsold in revenue. You know, so the number of copies being sold comparable. But it's just look. One thing I would say is I respect Square for making a game like this. You know, to their credit, this is very unique. It is a different style of game, different style of lead character. You know, like they really swung for something here, and credit to them because most AAA developers don't do that. You know, and there's lots to complain about when it comes to Square Enix, but like they do in the past, they have taken some swings of stuff. Look at Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, which sure, obviously Marvel is a safe license or whatever, but the way they made that game and how much money they spent on and all that sort of shit, right? I really respect that a lot. But at the same time, it also is a bit sort of head scratching. Like, why did you make this specific game in this way? Because there's a lot that just seems very tone deaf and just odd that's gone into it, you know?
Yeah.
And I really
there's something that was there. I mean, I like the idea. It's almost like you want them to do it again. The fact that they had some Final Fantasy developers, this studio, and then they had Western writers. Like, that's cool. When they told me that from the get-go, when they first announced this game, I was like, that seems cool. Let's go. So I'm willing for them to try it again. It just seems like something was lost here. Maybe it was development during a pandemic. Maybe there was some miscommunications or planning-ish. I don't know.
I think one of the big things too, outside of what you present in your game, is marketing. Unfortunately, a bad marketing strategy can ruin a perfect game.
And they struggled from the beginning.
And they struggled the minute that they released that. So let me get this straight. I'm like the minute that thing dropped. I follow lots of games journalists, and John Trotsky, I forget his last name. John, he writes for Nintendo Force. He thought that trailer was so funny that every day since the trailer dropped, he redubbed the trailer. Every morning I woke up and there was like a 50 thread, like he just kept redubbing it, and it always made me laugh because like no one asked for that, one, but two, like like that sticks with you, that the dialogue didn't work or the combat didn't work, and I think it comes down to, you can have a brilliant concept for a game, but if you don't know how to sell it, you don't know how to get people to be on the same page, like then no one's going to know about it, let alone what they see of the marketing, they're going to immediately go, oh, this is not for me. This has nothing in here for me.
Having said, interesting though, they released a demo for this game.
Which I said in my video, respect.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, I totally respect that. But at the same time, it's a really good example of why they don't do demos these days, because most people played that demo and then just proceeded to shit all over the game. Fair enough, by the way. Like, that's their opinion. That's their opinion. Totally. But that is why many publishers don't do it, because it's risky to show what you actually have. Unless you're really confident in it. You know what I mean? Like, you could release a Titanfall 2 demo of that fucking level, you know, the time traveling level, and everyone's buying Titanfall 2 after that, right? If you release a slice of this, it's kind of like, how's that going to go, you know?
Yeah. Hey man, that Final Fantasy 7 remake demo was exactly what we wanted. You know, we got that thing and it was like, oh man, we're only 2 months away. Let's go.
Yeah.
I really wanted to play the Resident Evil 4 stuff that people played a couple months ago.
Oh, sure.
It was like a hands-on, and I was like, fucking release that, man.
Yeah, right.
Release the 4-cut.
Speaking of survival horror,
Ooh,
let's talk about the Dead
look
Space
at this
remake.
segue master.
I'm good. I just
let's
call me
go.
the hostess with the most. So Dead Space remake. Ralph, I think you were mega positive on this. Did this catch you by surprise? Were you expecting it to be like this good of an example of a remake?
I don't. You know what? I think I didn't really have any concept going into it. I know some people were like, "This is gonna suck." I did hear that sort of chatter. I didn't walk into it with expectations one way or the other. But I was definitely blown away by how good a job they did. Like from the minute I booted it up, I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like just visual uplift, and immediately how good it felt, how faithful it was to the original. And just as you get further and further into it, just seeing all of the tiny little details that they have added, like, you know, like that skin peeling system on the necromorphs when you're shooting them and you can see that happen, and all of the changes that they've made to puzzles, you know, new areas to explore, new puzzles to do, just all of it. I just constantly, every step of the way, being like, oh, I'm so glad they added that. Like there was nothing that I saw where I'm like, oh, that kind of sucks that they changed that. Except for the voice, which I know a lot of people have different opinions on. Most people, I think, find it's an upgrade. But for me, I was like, I don't really think his voice added a lot to proceedings. He was just kind of a bit of a dude, just a dude doing a thing. And I don't know, that was the one thing where I was like, I don't know. But it makes sense because in the sequels he's voiced, and I can see that continuity. Plus, him having a voice opened up the narrative a lot. It allowed them to tell a bigger story, a better story, I would say. And so I understand why they made that choice for sure. But yeah, definitely overall very stunned by how good it was. Not because I didn't expect it to be, but just because I didn't really expect anything at all. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't. It's that funny phase, right, where we're kind of always like, oh, I hope to see something new in gaming, but then something comes along and just tickles those nostalgia bones, and I'm just like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I had such a big affinity to the original game, and it's kind of like, and I've used this example before, but you know when you're a kid and you're playing Pokemon Yellow, and it at the time is like the coolest fucking thing. And then when you play Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu or whatever, and it's like, this is what this looked like to me when I was a kid, right? Yeah. And I think that's where Dead Space Remake lies for me now. It's like, this is the game I remember playing, even though it's not. It's a remake of the game that I played.
But like, if you go back and play the original Dead Space today, it still holds up and looks good.
I played it over Thanksgiving. It plays fucking great.
Yeah,
like,
it really does.
But it's just, I think they made so many smart changes. I agree with you a little bit about the voice. I could have been totally fine if he just remained silent the whole time and just done his little sad grunts if I ever got him killed or whatever. Because as well, like with a horror game, you as the player, like your reaction to scares is the most important thing. But then when you have to factor in the way the character reacts as well, and so sometimes, you know, I would get scared by something, but then I would look at Isaac and he just wouldn't have reacted, or he wouldn't have said something. And I think there's like a weird dissonance there, but that's the most minor of minor gripes. The only gripe I actually have is that I wish there was a photo mode.
Yeah.
I'll add that surely. That's all.
I hope so. Yeah, because I would just love to go around and just take pictures.
I'll be the controversial one and say I think the voice made miles of improvements, especially considering what we got in different companies, different games, but you can draw the comparisons and parallels of Resident Evil Village and Resident Evil 7, right? Like Ethan Winters can go to hell as far as the character goes, right? Like we've talked about it a bunch, Ralph.
I killed him.
He got good right at the end and then he died.
Yeah, the minute that we gave him good character arc, he left the franchise as far as we know, right? So like but with Isaac, first off, like the fact that Isaac and Nicole this time look like they're actors and they've aged up is so cool, because it's not just like leading ingenue game character must come back to the Ishimura to find the love of his life, and geez, I wish I could find Nicole. Like that's how it felt to play the first game for me. Was like he wasn't there for the job, he was there to find Nicole. This time around, you can sense that even though he's like, where's Nicole, something is not right between him and Nicole. And the context that they added between their relationship and the fact that they're older and the fact that there's logs and conversations, like there's I don't know how much you guys completed of the game, but one of the side quest rooms, there's like Isaac finds the opening vlog from Dead Space 2 and like has to listens to it. And it's like, that's so genius because we've seen that before and it just layers the character in there. I could see it either way, whether he's talking or not. But to me, it was additive. It didn't detract from the narrative.
Sure.
I always really like actually voiceless protagonists. But with Dead Space specifically, it was always like, well, like he has a girlfriend. So like he's already very much a person. Like he's not as much this blank state because he is like on a quest to do a thing. I really liked him having a voice here because I like that they used the actor's likeness fully this time. Got her right. I like that he just looks like a normie dude. And I really like that they like got the whole engineer side of Isaac. Like a lot of the stuff you would do in the old missions, I believe in the original game, like the you could look in the mission log and stuff, and that was told through Isaac's perspective, and it was just like he's like, I'm scared, I have to go here, I don't know what's going to happen next. Where here, every time there's something for him to do, it's always him being like, oh, I can just bypass the compressor, and then if I blow this charge, maybe it'll open the door, because he's like an engineer, and like it actually felt like he kind of understood the processes of a ship. And I just like that. Every time there was a new development, it was a little bit more born out of his ingenuity, and it was cool. Like especially from the fact that it's like they had to finagle that, like they had to squeeze that in, you know?
Yeah.
I like that. I agree with that. Because also like if you go back and play the original game, it's very much just like, hey Isaac, what if you just go over here, turn this on? You know, he's just being ordered around for 8 hours.
I think I'd be more weirded out if he had a voice. If it wasn't the same voice actor as Dead Space 2 and 3, and or 2, there was no voice actor in Dead Space 2 or 3. I think it already just seemed well adjusted that we already have the same actor reprising the role versus like it's a new guy or like he's never had a voice before.
But like everything else they kind of did, they were able to read the room. They didn't overdo it. Like he doesn't talk. He's not like, it's like, dude, shut up. Like, no, he says things when he needs to say things, and that's really it. And I think that's a good example of like the rest of the game where it's like they added things, they changed things, because they had a really good awareness of what made the original game great, what people really liked about it, and that worked for me.
He never does that thing where he's like, oh, I've got to get power to that switch over there. Maybe I can lift that box.
I was about to say that,
Rob. He does the Aloy thing where it's like, I'm going to tell the player exactly how to solve this fucking puzzle before they can try and figure it out themselves. So I appreciate that. That's a nice touch.
I wish at least once or twice he went like, ew, gross. I think that was a little bit more realistic.
There's that iconic moment where the woman kills the guy in the room with her, then kills herself. And you're just watching it, and eyes just like, cool. Like,
like there's other moments where they could have given him a little like an animation of him being
even
like,
just him like
He starts at the end of the cut, he's like, that's all it does, you know?
The first necromorph where he's like in the little station and they're all trapped in there, that's the one for me where I was like, I would have loved, I feel like a fucking acting coach. I would have just loved more of a reaction from you, Isaac. Come on, like something, please. You just watch Chen get whatever the fuck happened to him.
Upgraded.
No, what a great game, man.
It was a great game. Fantastic.
I will say one of the things I love about my job being the completionist is just like sometimes when you get games early, you just have this uncharted territory of not knowing what's on the other side of the journey. And you know, I with the help of the guys over at Power Picks, I was able to kind of figure out how to complete the game optimally as possible. But we had this moment where it was like me and Susie, the Sphere Hunter, and the guys from Power Picks, and we're all just sitting there. And for those of you guys that don't know, in New Game Plus, there are new collectibles you have to find, and that's how you get the secret ending. And we found all the collectibles, but no one knew what to do with them. And so I was walking around and I found the place to put them, and I did it. And I felt like I had just found America for the first time. It was like, it was like, yo, this is so cool. And it's like, I like reporting back to the homies. I'm like, this is where it is. Let's go, boys. Let's get that ending. Let's do it. And like, I wish I could share that with people all the time, right? Like if we all had codes and we're all playing games together, we could like, it's this weird adrenaline thing of like, oh man, we figured it out. That's so freaking cool. And you don't get the experience when you know, if you're nowadays, you're like, oh, just use Google.
Yeah.
I think Elden Ring was another moment.
Elden Ring was like the prime example of that.
Not even just for games coverage, but also just like for everybody, really, because it was
for
such
everyone.
An expansive game that everyone was figuring it out in that first 2 weeks, you know, and that's very, and I think as well, something like Breath of the Wild, you know, Tears of the Kingdom will probably be something similar given the scale and the nature of that game, you know, which I think is always very special. I agree.
Yeah. Impossible mode sucked very hard, but
sounds
I can't even fucking imagine, man. you like, we obviously were all in Discord and you were telling us about your trials and tribulations there, and I was like,
couldn't pay me a lot of money to try and do that. No, thank you.
Hey, it definitely. Susie had this moment where she was like, "You realize you're like the first person ever to complete this game." And I was like, "Yeah,
that's my name."
No one gives a shit.
We do.
Like, I care, and my friends care, but like
heaps of nerds.
The zeitgeist. Yeah, some nerds do, and I'll take that. Yeah.
So, what do you think, Gerard? You specifically, Dead Space 2? Because I know you're big into Dead Space.
Oh
Dead
man,
Space 2 remake.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I really love Dead Space 2. I'm one of the few people that think Dead Space 2 outshines Dead Space 1. I don't, as of right now, I think Dead Space 1 still hasn't sold enough copies for them to consider a Dead Space 2. This game feels like they said, hey, if this goes well, the intent is Dead Space 2, Dead Space 3. They incorporated a lot of mechanics and Easter eggs and moments that are reflective not just in Dead Space 2, but in Dead Space 3 as well, especially if you're a completionist. You start to learn more and more about how they're trying to reunify the Dead Space universe, if you will. I would love Dead Space 2, and if it does well, I hope they redo Dead Space 3. I'm one of the people out there that did not play Dead Space 3 because everyone said it was trash, and I was too scared to play it. And now that I've played Dead Space 1 Remake, I want to go play Dead Space 3. So I don't know. I'd love to see it. I hope. People got to buy it, though. That's the only way that you can kind of vote with your wallet, right? Like, you have to tell the game companies, hey, this game is great. Otherwise, if it doesn't sell well, they ain't going to make another one.
I remember seeing a headline saying Dead Space was like twice the number of players or sales or something versus Callisto Protocol. Don't quote me on the exact. I
heard the inverse, that at least on day one launch, that Callisto Protocol's numbers were better than Dead Space, but I didn't see the weekend.
Yeah, this is based on the weekend. Again, don't quote me on the headline.
Gotcha.
But you know,
number
I know
one in the UK.
Number one in the UK.
Oh, but launch sales lower than Callisto Protocol.
Okay, there it is. You're right. Yeah. So I mean, Callisto, I know they're trying to sell 2 million units in the first year, and they say that'll be tough. So you got to guess.
Supposed to be 5 in the beginning, and they moved it to 2.
So you got to guess that maybe it's sold 1 to 1.5 million Callisto. You know, I think Dead Space has much longer legs. Hopefully, it'll obviously be discounted. It's also available on EA's subscription service, by the way. Anyone out there wants to be able to play Dead Space for really cheap, you just pay like $15 for 1 month of the EA thing, and you can do it. And then later on, it'll also end up on Game Pass because EA put their back catalog in their second tier of their like subscription service, and that tier of the service is synced to Game Pass. So you can definitely get your hands on Dead Space at some point at a price right for you. And I really hope they make a sequel. I don't know who will make it though, because Motive right now are working on Iron Man. So I don't know which studio is free to do that.
Oh, whoa.
It's going to be a challenge because I don't think you want to give it to a new studio because that studio knows what to do now. Like it just seemed like it would seem very silly to hand that off to a new studio to have to learn it again. But who knows? I mean, EA have their own pipeline and whatever. So yeah.
I just hope it doesn't end up the same way Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 remake ended up, where it's like we did this and then that's it.
Yeah.
Now we're being absorbed by Blizzard to make Diablo 4.
No.
Yeah.
Well, moving on, I want to talk about the game that I haven't really had time to play too much, but it's the one I want to play the most. Hi-Fi Rush. This was the shadow dropped Xbox joint, which is also on PC, from Tango Gameworks, the people behind The Evil Within, during the Xbox Developer Direct thing, where they talked about like Redfall and all that shit, but then they were like, new game right now, go get it. And it seems like the response has been pretty good.
Great,
Lucy,
man.
Pretty good.
Lucy, what's the deal, man?
Oh God, where do you even begin with it? It is a colorful rhythm action game. everyone's named after tea for some reason. Like the main character's called Chai. And yeah, basically everything in the world is to the beat. And when you are attacking, that's the thing. Doesn't matter if you fuck up, which I really enjoy because I'm terrible. Like my rhythm is awful, but all of your attacks land on the beat. And so the whole world is basically this one beautiful moving as one type thing. And then you're attacking and then you have these big boss battles. And yes, okay, I'm a little biased because the first big boss battle is to 1 Million by 9 Inch Nails, but they do such a cool thing. Like they kind of take the song and they time up specific boss moves to it, and then you're attacking on the beat, and then when you line up the big attacks and it becomes like a big thing, and it's fucking cool. Or is it an open, like a world type thing? Linear.
Yeah,
cool.
Missions. There's 10 tracks, 10 levels.
Yeah. 2 9 Inch Nails songs as well.
That's it.
Can I just ask something as someone who played the first half hour of it? I love cartoons. I love the way people animate in cartoons. I love the zany reactions, and this seemed like this really good cartoon anime mix type of thing. Do they keep that up throughout, like all the wild transitions, all the moments? Like, is it really that good? Because the intro to the game, I was like, there's no way. This is so cool.
As much as I've played, I think Ralph, you've probably played more than me. You finished it
all the way through. No, I'm actually up the last level right now. It's all the way through, man. They never let up on that. It's not just like at the open where they blow their load and then after that it's just coasting. And some of the cutscenes and scenarios are so clever and so fantastically animated. I remember seeing something that some of the animators from Beautiful Joe were actually on this, or artists from Beautiful Joe were on this. Don't quote me on that, but I definitely remember seeing something like that. And here we go. It's no wonder I got Beautiful Joe vibes from Hi-Fi Rush. The lead game designer was the director for Beautiful Joe 2. It was also the game designer. That's not what I saw. I think I might have seen the game designer actually shouting out some of the artists who worked on Beautiful Joe. But regardless, there's a lot of that DNA. And the presentation factor on this is absolutely off the charts. It looks incredible, just amazing, from the actual the art to the way it's animated is just flawless all the way through the cutscenes. I mean, look, I'm also a massive sucker for rhythm games. The first rhythm game that I can really recommend playing properly outside of DDR was Rez. I don't know if any of you guys played Rez. Yeah,
yes, Rez is amazing.
Yeah, Rez is really incredible because you actually making your own music as you play Rez, right? That's what the secret genius is. And what's necessary about Rez is you need to feel the music as you are playing Rez. If you do not feel it and you are not feeling like you are an extension of that music, then it's impossible to play that game properly. I cannot describe it to you until you've played it for yourself, but you really need to sink into that to properly play that game, right? There are a lot of rhythm games out there or not a lot, but there's a few. You got the Necrodancer, you've got Metal Hellsinger, you got BPM, whatever else. I really feel like Hi-Fi Rush has been the best one that I've experienced so far in making me feel like I need to be feeling this music, otherwise I'm not going to succeed. It's every swing of the guitar of your guitar adds to the track. and every offbeat creates that little like clap sound, and the combos have different sounds that they weave in, and when you summon in your allies all of a sudden with a press of the trigger, that's a different sound. The way the enemies wind up their attacks and the way they telegraph that's a sound. And so if you're just trying to play this as a game that you can see and that you can understand based upon its mechanics, you're not going to play it correctly. It's not going to click, right? There needs to be a moment where you just start listening to the music and listening to all the sounds you hear and then responding to that. And then that is when it comes together and it becomes truly amazing. And it's when it clicks, it's so good. It's beautifully deep while being so accessible. You know, the way it puts combos together and how they work is just fantastic. The breadth of enemy design, there's so many different types of enemies. The way they're combined is fantastic. I was not expecting that. I was expecting just a handful of enemies, but there's so many, and they keep introducing them all the way through. They add new scenarios to the combat, like, you know, the floor is electrified, for example, and you've got to, you know, move between different floor panels while also staying on the beat, while also dodging enemies, and they're trying to set you on fire, and it just builds up and up and up and up. And then I'm not done yet, but I know it ends at track 10 and it's done. And it's like, it just steps off when it's finished. And that's fantastic. Again, like the game can be completed in around 8 hours. And you're going to, well, I'm sure I'm at the point now where I'm nearly done. I know I'm going to feel so satisfied at the end of that because there's been no fluff, no like fat or guff or whatever, just pure top shelf crescendo all the way through, and then you're done. And I love that so much, you know. I really feel like this is this generation's Jet Set Radio, right? The way that we talk about Jet Set Radio, this is how people, you know, like the kids today, the Game Pass kids will talk about Hi-Fi Rush the same way 20 years from now. I really believe that because there's so much of that same DNA coursing through it. And also the circumstances of its release elevate that status further. The way that it's just like, here you go, and you're like, what? I can play this for like $10 right now. Let's go. That adds to its mythos almost, you know. So truly spectacular title. Sorry, I just realized I was like gushing for like 5 minutes there.
No, please. I couldn't think of a way. It's the end of the day. I like my brain was like mush. I was like, yeah, beat good. You know, music fun, hit enemy. It's genuinely like, I remember at the time Sunset Overdrive was trending as well because it has that, it's just, you know, the colorful palette, but it just feels like so refreshing in so many ways. And I think you're totally right. Like there is no fat to trim. It's just so well put together, and I'm so glad. And I mean, there's now discourse about like indies just shadow drop your games and stuff, and then, you know, the whole people being like, don't do that. Unless you're on a fucking platform like a Microsoft Developer Direct and you're the secret thing and you bring out Shinji Mikami and
a lot of caveats there.
You know, I think it's just a really special game, and I think we've kind of been on a run of just really fun like single player stuff. At least, I mean, in terms of what I've been playing, it's just been super nice, and just where stuff's done really well. And I think, you know, it kind of makes the Forspoken moments sadder because you kind of counterbalance with the stuff that just.
Yeah, it also, you think about Square Enix's marketing bill on Forspoken. They must have spent so much money marketing that game. Like all I've seen for like a year is ads for Forspoken. Yeah. And then you contrast that to Bethesda with this, literally zero marketing dollars behind it. Yeah. And to achieve that level of success. But it just goes to show you, you know, just like make a good game and it sells. Like it's not always true, by the way. I know plenty of good games that exist that don't sell. But having a good game certainly helps, and they certainly have a very good game in Hi-Fi Rush. So they were smart to drop it the way they did.
Yeah,
it definitely has me excited for when eventually Bomb Rush Cyberpunk comes out.
Yeah,
that game is gonna be sick.
That's cool.
Yeah, man.
Team Reptile don't miss.
What have Team Reptile done before?
Oh man, I can't. My brain stopped working. Hold on. I was obsessed with it. Lethal League 1 and 2. It's Smash Bros. It's Smash Bros. Except instead of hitting each other for damage, it's a ball. It's one ball and it's tag.
Oh, okay. That sounds fun.
And it is, it's so good. If you want like a chaotic, short, fun game, there's Lethal League and Lethal League Blaze. It oozes that cyberpunk Jet Set Radio vibe. Great soundtrack and very easy to play. All you do is you watch a ball and you have to smack it, and the ball hits your opponent, and that's it. It's a lot of fun.
Sure.
I'm down.
That's actually a good pitch. Yeah. Sometimes I need that simplicity, you know?
Yeah. True. Yeah.
All right. Well, a lot of games. We're eating good. Let's jump over to another user submitted question. Viewer, listener.
User.
Welcome, users.
We
to
fight for the users.
14.
I got Tron on the brain.
Welcome, users.
Excuse me.
To another episode of Friends Per Second.
So Steve writes in and asks, I played a lot of crap games as a kid, but still had a blast. It feels like gamers and influencers have gotten more critical throughout the years. Do you agree? And if so, is it justified?
No, you were a kid. You didn't know what was good. What's happening here, Steve?
I don't know about that.
I'm being facetious.
The only thing I will say
like
is
a small child is going to pick up like a really intense game and be like, yes, this is a work of art. I just want to see the
we all played
colors.
Metal Gear back in the day and could confirm back then. We were like, this is a work of art, you know?
Yeah, I was like 9. I was like, this is like Mission Impossible. This is so fucking cool. Like I had no nuance
look
at all.
This.
I'll start. I just want to say that I think it probably, like, you know, there's more video game media now. Mm-hmm. So there's more people talking about video games on platforms, but then people are more involved in the everyday conversation as well. Mm-hmm. So it seems like there's way more bad stuff, coupled with, I think, the fact that there is a lot of stuff to bitch about, from monetization stuff, you know, microtrans, all the quality. Like there's plenty of stuff I think that has ramped up that is worth talking about more. But I think that there is more of a critical nature now, but I think it's the nature of the growth of video games as a medium.
I agree. Yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think as well, you know, back then, there's more of a novelty factor to it, right? At least when I was a kid, you know, I couldn't just go to my TV and play a game. Like that was something that was regimented by my parents. It was a treat. And so you're not going up to your treat relaxing time in a headspace where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to think more critically about this. It's like, this is the thing I've been looking forward to all day. This is all I'm going to focus on. I'm just going to have a good time. But now, you know, at least as an adult, I have more control over my schedule. And so I think that's also part of it, is that you want something that respects your time. At least that's how I feel as I get older. And I think I have less patience for stuff that is not as good.
Sure.
Maybe. Whereas as a kid, you know, limited by time, limited by money, I couldn't just go out and buy a new game. But I'd still have a blast.
Can I get like old for a second and say kids have it easy now? Because like, even if you have a crappy computer, you could probably get at least one good free game on the Epic Game Store or Steam or whatever, or even a game on your phone, where like, I feel like you used to be locked in hard. I had Jeff Gordon NASCAR racing on Game Boy. And I'd never watched NASCAR in my life. Had no interest in it. I forced myself to love that game.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like the supply side of thing is so different now. I mean, I remember back in the day, it was your parents would buy you one game like every 6 months if you're lucky. And then there was the video store, you know, like you go to Blockbuster or Civic Video we had in Australia, which is like, you know, and you hire whatever you can get your hands on. And so you had to play whatever was in front of you. But at the same time, and obviously compare that to now where you say one free game a month. I mean, I literally do a list every month of free games
there's
available.
so much more.
There is at least around 20 free games available every month, and at least 10 of those are going to be very good video games, you know? And that's forgetting all of the free-to-play titles, which is what most kids are playing these days, you know? So I think the availability of games has shifted a lot. I do think there's just, in general, a lot more discourse, and that sharpens audiences, I think. That teaches them about like what's good and what's bad, and they think more comparatively, and they become, their expectations are raised a lot more because of that. I definitely look back on like MMOs, for example. When we started out with like World of Warcraft back in the day, we had no fucking clue what we were doing, man. You just walk around like some fucking village, and you're like, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life."
Yes, I'll commit my life to this.
Yeah, well, but my point is with that, like, we didn't know how to even equip items in that game, and we didn't know anything. But over time, all of these systems evolved outside of the game that taught us how to play better. And as a result, the way that we interface with MMOs and most video games has rapidly has evolved considerably. The way that audiences can now break through new content in those sorts of games is lightning fast compared to what it used to be back in the day, because audiences are better armed because of everything they've experienced outside of the video game itself. And I think it's the same with criticism, you know, and I think there's just so much more discourse out there that creates a sharper consumer with higher expectations. Is that a good thing? I don't know, to be honest with you. The jury's out on that. There was beauty in our ignorance when it comes to how we used to enjoy games, and that's lost forever. But at the same time, the standard of the industry continues to rise in some instances, not in many others. And so you just kind of take the good with the bad, I think.
Yeah.
Consumers are more active and more aware, and like I like that. I agree with you. I kind of started with that, but the one thing that I worry about is I don't know. I almost feel like I've seen like younger generations almost lose sight of the hobby because they're so wrapped up in the bitching, because they were kind of like, they came into this hobby only knowing the epic rants and the meltdowns about these games. And it's almost like some people, they almost feel like they only can communicate about games in that way when there's so much more to it.
Sure.
So I just worry about that like precipice. Like, consumer awareness is good, and what you said, how we're all sharper.
Yeah,
I think that's good, but it's like, don't lose yourself. Don't lose the hobby in it. There's always a good avenue somewhere. There's always a good nugget to find somewhere. But that's me. I'm like shiny Mr. Positive, and people hate me for that.
Totally agree. Yeah, totally.
I think there is a conversation to be said about all of this, in that it's a two-pronged thing. I think the first thing is that now anyone has the ability to use their voice, right? Yeah. Anyone can go onto Twitch or YouTube or TikTok or Instagram and they can go live, they can share their thoughts, share the gameplay, which I love. I think it's awesome that anyone can just boot it up and give it a shot. But because of the metagame of what it is to be a content creator, it does create the folly of, oh, this one viewpoint that I've cultivated may or may not work. You know, if I hate a game, I'm a very positive person like you are, Jake. I very rarely hate a game. So when I hate a game, my audience is very excited because they know I'm going to rip it to shreds and enjoy it. Enjoy the process of tearing it to shreds. But for the most part, I'm always like, game good. Thanks for watching. There are people in our space that are the exact opposite, where their entire identity is based off of, look at this piece of shit, mother, blah, blah, blah. And the controls are ass. And it's like, that's that person. That's their personality. But what it does do, though, is that then it kind of blurs the line of like, all right, they're playing a character, or that's their opinion. But where do I, the consumer or the watcher, actually fall?
And through the noise.
Yeah, and then and that's where it gets careful. That's where it gets scary. That's why I think games journalism is so important, because you don't know the people necessarily from their personalities who are writing these pieces. These are people who are dedicating their time to work on this one thing in their bubble for embargo time, so that when they do finish, they do have a collective piece to share. Otherwise, it's like, well, I got to make a video on this and a video on that. And what I'm saying is, to answer your question, Steve, I do agree in that I think that influencers and gamers have gotten more critical throughout the years. To me, it's about intention, and that's the hardest part to identify, because you never know who actually thinks Forspoken sucks, or if they think Forspoken sucks and they get a big fat bonus check because their video got 30 million views. So.
I mean, Dead Space paid me to shit on Forspoken. So I've actually seen that. That's a real theory.
Necromorph box.
Thank you for mentioning video game journalism specifically, because that's a great segue to our next section. Game journalism and reporting specifically has been up in the air a little bit lately because of a lot of layoffs. So we thought we'd have a good, productive conversation with the legendary Gene Park of the Washington Post. So please enjoy. Hey, Gene. What's up, man?
Hey, Jake. Good to see you, man.
I want to kick this off by saying thank you, because the last time you were on the Friends Per Second podcast, you gave a helpful tip that you learned from chemo treatment about getting rid of the hiccups. And I thought you sounded like a crazy person. And then I used it in a pinch and it actually worked. So
it actually works. It actually works. It's a trick I learned from Ego Raptor, Aaron Hansen. And he mentioned it on his show, and I was like, "That can't work. He's crazy. Like he's just a YouTuber, a gamer, whatever, you know." And I tried it. at a work. Yeah, exactly. And it worked the whole time.
Hang on,
exactly.
you need for anyone that didn't see that episode, you need to tell it again quickly, because there's going to be people in the comments being like, "What is this? I need to know what it is. Tell us the trick."
True. That's true. If you got the hiccups, close your eyes, have your arm parallel like this, and then lift it up towards your eyelid as it's closed, and try to touch your eyelid as barely as possible, like you're not even trying to touch it. And apparently, like the diaphragm movements and the muscle the movements of that would actually like kind of kick your body into like getting rid of the hiccups. And it works even during chemotherapy. Hiccups is a real thing, and they're powerful, and the trick still worked. So yeah.
Wow. There we go.
Unbelievable. You leave this podcast with helpful tips. Gene, unfortunately, we have you here today to talk about bummer stuff. Layoffs. The subjects of layoffs is absolutely huge right now in the gaming industry, from the development side to specifically the media side. I mean, we have Fanbyte, IGN, GameSpot, Giant Bomb, and more with layoffs. The Washington Post has closed its game section launcher, and that's where you come in. How are you feeling? I know you were saying before the show you just like got right back to work. What's going on?
Yeah, I had my cancer removal treatment in the end of November, and I took a month off, and I went right back to work because our publisher Fred Ryan basically said that he was going to lay off 10% up to 9% of the staff, which is like 200 people. So that scared the shit out of like everybody in the newsroom. And I was like, well, I wanted to come back and start 2020 to be off like working, but I definitely didn't think I would like go so hard. You know, I opened with like an interview with Neil Druckmann and covering The Last of Us, which is of course the story of the moment right now. And yeah, just the other week, we got news that my entire section of the video game vertical of the Washington Post called Launcher is shutting down, and I'm losing 5 of my colleagues, and one of them is staying to move to another section called the Next Gen section, and I will be moving on to the Style section of the Washington Post. So the Style section is basically the features, arts and entertainment section of the Washington Post, which frankly I think that's a good idea to have video games coverage there. I just wish I had my whole team with me. So, you know, yeah.
So it's interesting. It almost feels like a step backwards, because I mean, you came from newspapers, and I know some other people that started in newspapers, where a lot of newspapers and small outlets just had one guy, the video game guy. So you're almost back to being like the guy, but for a large outlet.
Yeah, that's basically it. Like, and you know, to be fair, like we have like one movie critic, you know, we have one TV critic that we just hired, and I'm forgetting her name, but I hear she's wonderful. And so that is it. Then there's one game critic or game writer.
But yeah, when you say critic is a specific job. Covering the industry of video games is a separate thing. So how many people in the Washington Post are covering the entertainment industry, the film industry, TV industry, whatever? Is it still just that one person doing it all, or what? No.
So, like the one person would probably do a lot of the heavy lifting, but there is a whole team of like general assignment reporters, and they would cover like whatever, you know, if the TV writer can't do it, then they'll cover other TV shows, or they'll cover other movie stuff. So yeah, there is other staff covering it, but again, I'm new to the department, so I don't know exactly like who is made up of what. I still don't even know who my editor is, you know. So I'll figure that out. But I do know that there isn't just one person writing about movies. There are several, but there is the one movie writer at Hornaday, and she like does like the big profiles of George Clooney that she did I think last month, stuff like that. So
Sure.
So do you know what your remit is now? Like, Launcher just got into the nitty gritty of all elements and aspects of the industry. Now that you're kind of in the style section, are you going to have to just cover the big ticket stuff that's of more general interest, or are you still able to dig and do the stuff that appeals to the gamers?
I think it's going to be tough for me to like cover like, stuff like, I wanted to do a story on like the rappers who did the trailer for Street Fighter 6. Like that kind of stuff, that kind of smaller stuff is going to be a little bit harder. So like we haven't talked about it yet, so I don't really know exactly what my coverage area will be or what that will look like. But I imagine that I will probably only have to stick to the big hits, like your Zelda and your Final Fantasy 16, at least in terms of reviews and in terms of like game releases. And I mean, I've got I have a lot of other things planned, and I did have a lot of things planned within Launcher, and now I'm just gonna have to do it all by myself. Which is why I tweeted the other day that video of Joe Renato, the one man band, one of the few men who can operate American photogrammer type instrument, and he's just like playing ragtime music, pulling every single type of instrument, and it's like that. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna have to try to do now.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of people would instinctively go like, well, independent YouTubers do it all on their own and they get by just fine. But what YouTubers do is very different to what you guys do, right? I think a lot of what we do is about content aggregation. It's about finding the reporting that's already taken place and then kind of like bringing it together and telling a story in a way that works for our audience. But we don't have the ability to do anything investigative. Companies, generally speaking, don't want to talk to us because there's a lot of layers to that, right? But we do not have anywhere near the level of access that a mainstream publication does, especially a publication like Washington Post. So while one person in the world of YouTube makes a lot of sense, it seems like one person at the Washington Post, one of the largest, best financed publications on the planet, one person to cover the world of video games, the largest entertainment medium on the planet by many, many magnitudes. That seems really dumb, right? That seems. Am I wrong in that reading? Is that? I don't know if you can agree with that without getting in trouble, but that seems super dumb to me.
I mean, I made my feelings known that I think that it's not a great decision. At the very least, some of our staff would be nice, not all of them. Like Christ, like I really could use the video editor, right? Going back to your point about creators, there's so much to talk about in terms of like how creators have disrupted the game journalism space, right? And you're right that a lot of them do aggregation. Obviously Jason Schreier is like kind of the gold standard of like getting all of these scoops. And like what would the Halo content creators have to talk about if Jason didn't break that story confirming the Unreal Engine stuff? To be fair, that was actually confirmed several months ago by another creator. So there are creators still doing pretty good work out there, of course, right? Definitely. So I just don't want to like throw them under the bus too, but like we have the power of like lawyers, that can look over our work and make sure that make sure everything's okay. There is the thing about access, I can tell that like Sony PlayStation chief Jim Ryan, I'm gonna sneeze.
Bless you. There it is.
There you go.
Bless you.
Feels so good.
It was worth the build up. I'm glad you let us know. There was
For dramatic effect,
there.
I was just like, what's Jim Ryan done? Oh my gosh.
I mean, you could tell that Jim Ryan enjoys being in like the more prestigious publications, right? So we have that advantage where like Jim Ryan would love to have an interview in the Washington Post and see his name in the Washington Post. And I can probably, tap Doug Bowser and see if he might be available, and he will probably be a little bit more available to me. And those are still the things that I hope to still take advantage of when I'm covering as I move forward with my coverage. But like all the stuff about crunch and like unionization and stuff like that. Those are stories that, one, I'm not that interested in doing, but two, I do think are important. Like, or maybe one, I think they're important. Two, I'm not that interested in doing. Right.
Sure.
And that sucks because now like the coverage is just less, not even multifaceted. It's just faceted. It's just gene faceted. You know, like.
Your outlook determines what content gets covered to a degree.
Yeah, exactly. So, that it's, and it's Nathan Grayson, who came from Kotaku, like he is an expert in like covering Twitch streamers. Like he really knows that space very well. And like, look at what's happening this week with Atrioc and like, and everything else. Like all of that stuff could be, like Mr. Beast, the Mr. Beast thing, like all of that stuff could use some good writing and some breaking down. And we're getting rid of him,
Do you think?
And it sucks because he left Kotaku to be safe in the Washington Post.
Sure.
It turned like the Washington Post shut him down, and not Kotaku. Kotaku's still around. That sucks.
Do you think it's a case of people who want gaming news aren't getting it from the Washington Post? They're not seeking it out there, and therefore the ROI, as Washington Post perceives it, just wasn't there. Like, what do you think really drove their decision to want to wind this up like that?
I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking too much. I'll just say it. Whatever. They told me that the Washington Post is very good at innovating in the periphery. And what they want to do moving forward is to move that. So that's why we were launcher. Like there's a sense that we were othering games coverage, which is how I felt. Right. That's how I felt. I was never, to be quite frank, I was never really a fan of the launcher name. Like when you see me up here at podcasts, when you see me at Good Morning America, when I appeared the other week for The Last of Us, I didn't submit my name as Gene Park of Launcher. Mm-hmm. I submitted my name as Gene Park of the Washington Post because I recognized the power of the branding of the Washington Post. Yeah, and so I was not a fan of like othering that. But otherwise, what was the question again? I forget.
I'm just curious to see why. Why do you think they made this decision? I mean, you might assume it's because people aren't getting their news from the Washington Post, or the gaming news, I should say. But what is it you think that? Why do they do this?
I was just told that they want that innovation within the core product. So, like, I guess, like that's just me, and like, I think the rest of the team was also innovative too. And I wish that they were brought along. And there's so many things, voices in my head telling me why I was kept. And at others' word,
it's survivor's guilt.
It's absolute survivor's guilt, coupled with the fact that I'm just recovering from cancer. So I'm just like, man, like, did you just not do that because I just got done with cancer? I don't know. It's awful. It feels so awful to be down on myself like that. Sure. And and I hate to sound selfish, but because obviously the rest of my team is suffering a lot more than I am, at least in terms of work. And it's just. But going back to your question, Ralph, our traffic was good. It was not bad. Like, it took a hit because I was gone for a year, right? And I don't know if you looked at the numbers or anything like that. Like, my guess is that like we were, because again, it was initially thought that they were going to get rid of up to almost 200 people, and then now we only lost 20. That's only 2% of the Washington Post, not the 9% that we feared, right? My guess is that cutting off video game coverage was an easy, nice, light item that you can just slice off the budget without angering, the powerful, the feature section, which is historic and has a huge legacy. There's also the local section, which a lot of people were afraid of seeing cuts because, national news is the stuff that brings in the big bucks, right? But we are still the newspaper of Washington, D.C. And for me personally, I would love to have a lot more local coverage in the paper instead of like relying on the local radio station all the time, which kind of does provide better coverage, right? But my guess is that like in terms of just cutting something off and just cutting off a nice slice of the budget, we were just the easiest to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, Jake.
It's frustrating because it's, when you hear of cuts like this to media sites, it's like gaming is the biggest form of media. It's growing. It's bigger than movies. It's surpassing everything. So to see stuff like this happen, it makes me wonder, like, especially in terms of like actual reporting, like what you said, like access and getting real access to people, and like Woodward and Bernsteining shit. Like, you know, it makes me wonder, like, even if people like Schreier are just like, you can't just take that for granted, like the work that you guys do.
Yeah, and you know, going back to Ralph's point about whether people would come, I do agree that there is a sense that, you know, people don't go to the Washington Post for gaming news, right? Like, we're not like they'll go to SkillUp, they'll go to Before You Buy, you know, they'll go to that, like I want to hear what Gerard thinks about the latest like Mega Man game or whatever, you know, and of course GameSpot, you know. There's so much well-established publications already, and you know, I think. But there was a good opportunity because we were the only mainstream outlet doing it, other than Bloomberg now, right? Obviously with Jason. But before Jason got hired, we were kind of first. And the New York Times still doesn't do it at all, you know? And then, of course, there was the coincidence and irony of all of our layouts. And at the same time, the New York Times, paper of record in America, say, well, video games, you know, not too long ago, they were for kids. But now it's like, oh, God, what year is
Jeez.
Yeah,
like,
we're having
like,
this conversation again, huh?
Yeah,
Okay.
like what year is this? What year is this? You know, and that is how the New York Times thinks of video games. That is exact. I'm telling you right now, like everything you suspect about what the New York Times thinks about video games is correct. You know.
I mean, I will say, does he still do stuff for the New York Times? Let me Google. I don't know if you guys know Simon Parkin. No, he's New Yorker.
Yeah.
I thought he was New York Times. No, I think he might have had a couple bits in the New York Times, but yeah.
The New Yorker does better stuff now at this point. Yeah.
And it's just so.
What I definitely, one of the things I saw after all this was a number of people laid off and otherwise, people who are still working in games, or they've already left games media because they didn't see a future on it. And a lot of people were saying the dream jobs that I aspired to when I was coming up, those jobs no longer exist, and they will never exist. It's the landscape is changed forever. It's erased in many aspects. What's your view on that? Like, what do you see as the future of games media separate from the world of content creation?
Hearing stuff like that, I think Shannon was the one who said that. A lot of people kind of, my colleague Shannon Liao, who covered a lot of the unionization stuff, she got laid off too. She said that. I think a lot of people kind of shared her sentiment, right? And that breaks my heart, you know. I'm older, you know, I'm 41. And for me, I've been a journalist since I was 21. So I've been a newspaper journalist for 20 years now. And for that entire time, I have always also thought that my dream job doesn't exist anymore, because I got into journalism because I wanted to cover music. I wanted to be a music critic, you know. I was never really that interested in covering video games ever, you know. It was music. I wanted to be Cameron Crowe and Almost Famous, hanging out with like the latest hip hop groups, right? And that kind of job is only, again, going back to our original point or what we discussed earlier, that kind of job is only there's the one guy or the one girl doing it, you know, at each newspaper. And if that person doesn't retire or die, then you're not getting that job. So that was really the only way you can wait to get those kind of dream jobs, is waiting for someone to fucking die, you know. And that's an awful way to want to advance your career. With games journalism, you know, I think there has been a lot of pop-up sites, you know, and you know, I think someone made this point on Twitter, but like back in like 2008, there was the Great Recession and there were a lot of layoffs. But then from that, a lot of websites popped up, and you know, there were jobs for a few good years. And so I'm wondering if that's going to happen too. But I don't know, man. Like, you know, people think about like, there should be a games journalism defector, but like, have you really thought about the overhead costs, the human cost of that? You know, because that's easily going to be 7 figures, in the millions, multiple millions. You know, just to provide a salary, the insurance, and if you do want to hire a lawyer, then obviously that's going to be even worse. You know, so we're talking for anywhere from $1 to $3 million a year. You know. Just for a small newsroom of like 10 or 15 people, you know, that's not going to work.
I think we live in the era of GoFundMe, Kickstarter, and Indiegogo and Patreon are seen as these emergency break glass situations when, things like this happen, right? Whether it's a group of content creators falling apart, starting their own thing, or if it's something like G4 imploding, the fan and avid reaction is, well, hey, please don't stop. We want to support you. But to your point, Gene, you can't really ask for $3 to $5 million to keep a newsroom going when people don't know the people behind the newsroom, nor do they know how to run a business. They don't know any of that. They just know, hey, I'd love to keep seeing the thing that I am ingesting every week.
The one kind of example among this that I think about, and I kind of want to say this up front, it's like, I don't see myself as a games journalist by any means. I am a video producer. I feel like I work in a incredibly different world than, newsrooms and traditional journalism. So I'm always fascinated by people who kind of, whether by circumstance or just, wanting to go out and do their own thing, they go to places like Substack and Medium, which is kind of like, everyone kind of defaults to Indiegogo and Patreon for sure. But like, that is a new wave of really interesting journalism where I follow, like, I never thought I'd be a newsletter person, but I'm following so many newsletters just because I'm supporting a creator who I know is making the shit and I know exactly what I'm getting into. And there's always like the free tier that I can enjoy a couple times a week, but I can pay and I can get the extra shit that I know that they're working on. And like Substack to me is just this, it's just kind of exploded. And maybe that's just, the stuff that I gravitate towards, but it's, and I'm not saying that this is the path and that people should aspire to it, because in this world, who knows what's going to last. But it's really interesting to see, like, there is one Substack that I follow, which is basically every couple weeks, they cover a period of time and they are doing the entire history of man. And that's just like the most interesting shit to me. Or there's Ryan Broderick in Garbage Day, and he's just covering like internet weirdness, right? And, and there's just this whole other thing. Yeah, there were blogs. 10, 15 years ago, obviously, but nothing like this where it's it's content creation, but written. They're doing the collab stuff that you see YouTubers do. They are doing the sponsored stuff, and it's interesting to see.
Gerard and Lucy, you both hit something that is interesting, and something that I've seen a lot of in terms of like, I love reading comments, so I'm under the comments of every piece of content that talks about these layoffs, right? One of the most prevailing things I've seen, and it'll be disheartening to hear, but a lot of people feel that, I see articles about unionization, I see articles about crunch. Those are not things I want to pay for. I see people just say up straight up, that does not have any real value for me. I think those are important stories, but those aren't things I want to pay for. What I do want to pay for is people I like. And, that is something that like Taylor Lorenz has called a long time ago, and I called a long time ago in terms of like personality-based journalism. That is something that hasn't gone away. It's only gotten stronger, over the years. And that sucks, because that carves out that's a big gatekeep for people who aren't, like just outgoing, or like just have built-in personalities, or are trained or well media trained. Like I don't think I'm even that media trained. I'm trying to exercise my tick of saying like all the time when I have conversations.
You're on the wrong podcast for that, my friend.
Yeah, we're terrible guys. No, but you raise a great point, Gene, that being a great writer is a different skill set to being someone who's wants to engage on Twitter, who's someone who is able to write takes and tweets that are going to get attention, who is going to devote the time and mental energy, because God knows Twitter.com requires a lot of that, to putting yourself out there. And those two things shouldn't be what's required. Like, you should be able to be a fantastic writer and get by on your own merits. But unfortunately, the way the internet has evolved, and this is where, maybe the most investigative thing I work on is the Very Online Show, where I kind of look at this shit all the time and how the internet has fundamentally broken everything. It's the way, unfortunately, that we're wired now. It's how jobs are wired. There is such a perceived worth to online clout.
Yeah, for sure.
Where it never existed before. It's a weird one.
Yeah.
I really, I mean, I think as well, a lot of that personality stuff, it does. I think there's such an important case for truly investigative journalism that is like unafraid to, as you said, like would Bernstein your way through stuff, right? And a lot of that personality stuff is just not in that. It's not trying to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
no,
it's trying to be on the surface level. It's trying to make a connection with audience and whatever else. And we're all working online. We're all sort of in that broad space. Do you know what I mean? But we all kind of need other people who are working away in the background, who are like following the money, and they're reading the reports that are being filed to some obscure thing that we've never even heard of before. And they're actually breaking news in the world of video games, because there's a lot of news to be broken in this space, and there's precious few people breaking it, and it seems like there's going to be fewer opportunities for those people to do that in the future, because no one will hire them. Again, you could just become your own independent reporter, sure, but like, where are you going to get your money? How are you going to do that, right? Like, it's just, to be able to properly do that job, you need to be paid for it, right? And you need to have practice doing it. You need to cultivate sources. And it just seems as though the market for that kind of thing is shrinking so rapidly. And it really bums me out, because, again, I do not believe that we as online content creators provide a full service. We provide part of a service, but we are useless without that other primary news generating entity, right?
Exactly, because a lot of it, like you said, is aggregation, that you're pulling stories from GameSpot, from IGN, from Bloomberg, from the Washington Post, right?
And so really need that industry to continue to survive. However, if someone were to ask me today, should I enter games media? I'd be like, nah, man, I think that's a bad idea. You know what I mean? Like, I really want that to continue to exist because they need it. But I look at the shrinking job opportunities. I look at the pay in that space as well. And, like general job security, all that stuff. Plus the fact that you usually just get yelled at by your audience because, like, gaming journalists bad, There's a lot of reasons why I might say to someone, it's an important career, but don't do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, when I was an intern at the San Gabriel Valley Tribune in 2003, my editor told me, don't become a journalist.
Right.
He says, like in general, he was like, are you kidding me? Why? I remember distinctly what he said. He said, my wife hates me. My health is terrible. I'll only earn $60,000 a year, and I've been in this job for like 30 years. And like look at my fingers, they're broken and they're gray. He was like, don't do this. And that scared me. That scared me away from journalism. And I actually did not. My first job when I applied out of college was not in journalism. Fun fact: it was actually with Golan Harris, the PR firm for Nintendo.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Oh my god, that is such a sliding doors moment. Holy shit.
Exactly. I did not get the job because I got into a car accident right before the interview. So
What?
So I showed up completely disheveled and scared and nervous, and they were like,
like whiplash. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, it totally sucks. So I ended up becoming a journalist, and it's been an interesting life so far.
Sure. But I mean, so what advice would you provide to someone who was coming to you saying, should I go into games media? Like, what would you actually say to them?
Oh God, man, I don't know. Find like it's kind of like what Lucy said, like history of man stuff. Find a good angle. Find your audience. I like to go to different audiences. Like I think a lot of my audience discovered me through the podcast Castle Super Beast, hosted by two Canadians that I've been following for a long time, over 10 years. And when they asked me to come on the podcast, I was like, oh my God, I'm so starstruck. But they cover mostly fighting games and like character action games like Devil May Cry, like Hi-Fi Rush is obviously like their jam right now. And so like with my expertise and like knowledge within those genres too, like I was able to really mesh with them, and the audience really liked me. So I think it helps to really find your angle of coverage. Focus on one thing.
Yeah.
And it just go independent, man. Start a YouTube channel. Get a mic. It doesn't have to be that good.
Make sure it's not a USB-C mic, man.
Oh,
That's it.
don't.
You know?
Oh, we would have saved this. Oh.
Has to
We were
be an
so
XLR,
close.
man, or don't bother. If it's not $800 mic, don't even bother starting, okay?
Yeah.
Anyone not on
USB-C
Twitter,
mic right here.
yeah, that's it.
Yeah. If you're not on Twitter, don't bother.
No, but if you did see that, then yeah, for sure. Just find your angle. Specialize in one thing. That's probably, and then you can grow from there, right?
That's true.
Right? Because
that's true.
I mean, look at what Gerard has done. He's the completionist, man. You know.
But man, my journey sucked. Like it was a rough one, you know.
Yeah.
Like it was. When I say that YouTube was the Wild West, like it was me and Total Biscuit and Angry Joe and the Angry Video Game Nerd and JonTron and Peanut Butter Gamer and then a bunch of websites, and that was it, you know. And by the time that I finally ascended to my position of success, like there are people just doing things faster, better, stronger, quicker, and more efficient than me. And so it's like, you know, there's every path is like, I'm proud that I made that choice to do that, but like, dude, it was rough. It was, there was no manual to get me there. And games journalism, I think, was the stepping stone that inspired me to do it. And I feel like without a proper games journalist, you know, in Ralph's situation too, like if someone asked me, hey, do you want to, you know, be a games journalist? I would say, no, I'm okay. You got your guys' work is way more important than mine.
Sure.
So lastly, I just want to know from the consumer side, what do you think the average person can do who does care about where they get the news or the pundit that they listen to or the reporter that like what? I mean, me as someone who reads a bunch of people, sometimes I don't even know what I could do to help. So what can the average person do?
Well, for one thing, you can subscribe to the Washington Post.
Yeah,
because they cover a lot of other things. You know, there's a whole lot of coverage. You know, and it's cheap, man. Like it is cheap, but that's how difficult the struggle is to get people to subscribe, man. Because there are kids out there paying $5 a month for a Twitch streamer, and they are getting one service, which is enjoying the content and entertainment from that streamer. That's it, right?
Hot tubs.
Hot tubs, baby, whatever, ASMR, whatever, right? The Washington Post is cheaper than a Twitch subscription at $4 a month. You get, you get investigative journalism into the government. You get food recipes. You get the reviews of the latest tech, You don't get
Wordle. You don't get Wordle. That's one thing, man.
No Wordle.
I was so mad when the New York Times Wordle, and I was like, "That's so smart of them."
Wait, who just bought Quordle though? I think that just goes. Oh, it's 4 Wordles.
Oh right.
At the same time.
Innovation, man. It's it. Yeah. Sorry, Jane. I cut you off with my stupid joke.
No. I slacked off the New York Times earlier, but that was a very, very smart acquisition for them, and I wish we were as aggressive and smart at the Washington Post. But still, we are still the second most subscribed newspaper in the United States, and we are still far behind the New York Times, which has kind of become like the Netflix or like the essential, like the Xbox Game Pass, I guess, of regular journalism, right? And everything else would be supplemental, So if you're really that interested in coverage of the federal government, then the Washington Post would be a great thing. Or if you're into business, then the Wall Street Journal. Those are the only 3 papers really that are having any kind of success right now in subscriptions. Going back to your original point, Jake, I don't know, man. Like there's so much content going around asking for money, and there's only so little of your money to spend,
Yeah.
So again, to what Gerard said, I might have praised Gerard for being a completionist, but he reminded me, and it's true, that he had to fight for every single viewer, every step of the way, and it wasn't easy, and he's still doing it,
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
No.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
You're right, Gene. It's that it's a fight you never want to give up on, and I felt the same way with G4 when that ended. Like I still have that PTSD of like, hey man, there's still a chance. There's still a chance we can get through this and fight back. And I'm sure that's what you're feeling, like, hey, maybe there's something you can do at the Post that will bring back all your team and you can continue. And it sucks because you guys did great work.
Yeah.
Listen, I have been responsible for the foundation of teams before at the Washington Post, and to give myself a little credit, I do have a lot. I've been there at the Washington Post for almost 8 years now. At this point, I have a lot of institutional knowledge of how that paper works, how the company works, how people operate there, the different managers, and the politics of the place. Right. I was the person who started the live streaming coverage of news at the Washington Post, and because I was doing all that by myself, I had a tripod and a camera and everything like that. I was just running around the newsroom, filming different reporters who were super nervous to be on camera. And because of that success, I was able to make an argument to hire an entire team of live stream coverage. And we still have that there. And that eventually, those hires eventually led to the Washington Post TikTok, which is very successful right now too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to try my best to do that again. I'm getting older. I'm a lot more tired. But I definitely want to prove out that there can be some high interest in the Washington Post for games coverage, and that people would want to pay for that and so many other things that we offer.
Sure.
Well, we're glad you're back out on the field. Keep killing it. We love reading you. We love you. So, Gene, thank you. Gene Park from the Washington Post. He'll be linked below if you're watching the YouTube version. Check out his interview with Neil Druckmann. It's really good. And we'll see you again soon, man.
Love you all.
Thanks, Gene.
Love you, Gene.
Be good. Thank you once again to Gene for sharing your insight and for letting us talk to you about this stuff. It's all kind of chaotic. We're all kind of worried for our friends and those out there. So thank you for sharing that with us. As we wrap things up, obviously we have to hone in on this week in gaming, or in this case, this fortnight in gaming. I gave our fellow hosts a list of games to pick from that came out in the last week or so, and they've all picked one they'd like to gush and or talk about. Jake, let's start with you. What game are you keen to talk about today?
So this week, 14 years ago in 2009, in Japan, they got Demon Souls on the PlayStation 3.
Ooh.
Wow.
I'm not, especially back then, I wasn't the biggest FromSoft guy, but I feel fortunate, and I'm always grateful to like friends and family members in my life that call attention to something before it pops off, before it blows up. And my friend Taylor showed me Demon Souls, and he was like, look at this game. It's like really hard, and there's like a dragon, but you have to run across the bridge, but then the dragon's going to kill you. And then like he showed me the whole ins and outs of the game and how you lose your souls. And I was like, that sucks. and here we are.
14 years later.
That's right. You showed FromSoft, didn't you, Jake?
Yep. Yeah, I got them.
That guy's never going to amount to nothing. What's his name again? The director guy. Who can even remember his name? Just such a minor player.
Yeah.
Hey, Demon Souls got Game of the Year from GameSpot all the way back when.
That's quite impressive for them to have shown that level of foresight. Because I remember reading, it's funny going back and reading old Demon Souls like reviews, and they're like, this thing fucking sucks. It's so badly designed. It's like, you know what I mean? Just basic game design principles not adhered to, you know?
Yeah, a Kevin Van Ord special back in 2009.
Nice. Shout out to him.
9 out of 10, superb. The good, amazing, unique online features, blah, 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 blah. The bad, extremely difficult.
Imagine if you put that in a review today about a FromSoft game.
God.
Imagine how much your review would be destroyed by the discourse.
And then some presentation issues as well. But he loved it. So, and yeah, we gave a Game of the Year back then. So Taylor and Kevin.
Lucy, since you're at it, what is your game that you want to talk about and showcase?
So 23 years ago, on January 31st, launched a little game called The Sims, which is the gateway drug of mine from playing just games with other people, with my family and my friends, to playing, to fully being like, Dad, I'm afraid I need a PC. And this has to be mine. And I never got my own PC. It was on the family PC. But like, this was the game that it just started everything for me. I remember seeing it at a friend's house, and then just immediately, this has to become my whole personality. It also got me into like online communities in a weird way. Like the first ever message board that I was on was the Sims one. I got into custom content and, like the community side of that, because the way you used to share custom content on the Sims was fucking rad. And there was a thing called the storybook, where you would make little stories in the Sims and then upload it to the gallery. People would have stories. Like this is how weird it was. Like, so there was no YouTube. So if you didn't know how to do things in the Sims, you would have to wait for someone to like take the screenshots of the storybook and then upload it to the Sims exchange and follow step by step. And like, as a kid at this point who didn't really have much online literacy, I remember stumbling across this stuff and stumbling across like meshes and skins that people were making and just thinking, how do I not know about this? Like, I feel like I stumbled upon a gold mine. And I think just from there, it opened my eyes to so many different things. And I've spent thousands of hours on The Sims. The Sims 3 probably the least, even though that was a really great game. I just never had a PC that could run it because it was very badly optimized. It was I think still bad now. But yeah, and just seeing the way that the Sims team and Maxis itself has changed over the years, I also think they are one of the best studios in terms of keeping an open dialogue with their audience and the fans, and the way that they tee up new content. They listen to the way, like, they got skin tones wrong completely, and then the way they listen to people within the community to incorporate that into the base game. And now the base game's free, so there's just more Sims players. It's great, and it's a very formative franchise for me. So happy
Thank you
birthday.
for that.
I feel old.
I'm grateful. That one introduced me to piracy. That and Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone were the two games where I'm like, I don't have any money. My friends have it. How do I get it on my thing? That and the modding scene early in the Sims.
Mm-hmm.
I remember figuring out how to like play as like Darth Vader, and like you were able to get your own posters. You were able to mod your own posters into your. I had like the Matrix posters in my house everywhere. Like, and just like the fact that game got me into PC gaming, and also the other stuff that comes with PC gaming, like all the messy stuff. I love it for that.
Yeah, I remember being in retail during that period, and like, because I think one of the things that made The Sims so successful was how it connected with female audiences, right?
Oh yeah.
Because like I worked retail, many game stores actually, and it was just dudes walking through the door generally, right? And The Sims, though, the volume that it sold was incredible, and most of the people buying it were females, and it was just a whole new thing. Like having women walking into the EB Games, or Gamespot as you guys call it, just because that game had found a way to connect with female audiences in a way that I don't think any game to that point had done so. Certainly not from what I've seen based on my time in retail, So that's that. I remember that was the highest selling game of all time for a long time, because I think they just found a way to crack the other side of the fence, which so. Crazy.
And then they've always kept like celebrity tie-ins. They've been so smart about that. I think the biggest string in their bow certainly is the expansion packs, and the fact that they're never ending.
Yeah.
There's always something else to buy, and it's a very smart business model, good gameplay, fun as shit, man.
Ralph, what about you?
Well, 25 years ago, on January 21st, Resident Evil 2 arrived on PlayStation.
I'm wearing the shirt.
I know. That's exactly why I chose it, man. That's why I chose it. Just because it felt right. But yeah, man, still, that was my first Resident Evil game. And obviously, unbelievable. Couldn't believe it was a thing. I did rent that. Every major game that I played, other than maybe Nintendo 64 games, I think, those I think my parents bought for me. But most games outside of that were rentals. And that was definitely a rental, and just like unbelievable. And then I went back and played Resident Evil 1 after that, and I was like, this isn't as good. It's like, they really made a big jump with 2. You know what I mean? Like going back doesn't quite work as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then 3 actually. I think I might have enjoyed 3 more than 2 because of Nemesis and just how fucking scary he was to have him like following me around and shit. But yeah, man, 25 years. I can't believe that. That's wild.
We used to play Resident Evil on the playground at school.
How?
Wait,
How?
so-
Explain the game.
We
Explain
would
the
just
game.
point at each other and go like that. And I had only played Resident Evil 1 at first, but Resident Evil 2 was out. And all my friends had played it, and they were like, "All right, cool. You could be Barry. You could be this person. I'll be Leon." And then they pointed at me, and I was like, "Who could I be?" And I remember my one friend being like, "You could be Claire." And I was like, "Claire sounds cool." And they were like, "Yeah, Claire has a grenade launcher." And I was like, "Claire is awesome." And then I played the game later on. I was like, "Wait, Claire's a girl?" And it was still like best game ever.
They were like, "He's cheating. He's moving and shooting at the same time. You're not allowed to do that." Oh man,
That's awesome.
Well,
Aw.
as we wrap things up, mine the obvious one I was going to say is Final Fantasy VII, which came out 26 years ago in Japan.
Wow.
Which I feel like they just announced yesterday, or because yesterday was the 31st, as we're filming it, that officially in Japan it is Final Fantasy VII Day, and it is a now.
that's right.
I don't know if it's a holiday, but it's a special day now to forever commemorate the fact that Final Fantasy VII has come out. But I think what I really wanted to say, because that just seemed too obvious, was 15 years ago, in the year of 2008, we had the brawl to end them all, Super Smash Brothers Brawl.
Wow.
That came out 15 years ago in Japan. And the weird thing about it, and the sad thing about it, is that while it is one of the ones that everyone looks back nowadays and is bummed out about, the reason why I love it is I love Subspace Emissary mode. I think it was awesome. But it does make me sad because in 2008, that was when we did have YouTube, and all of the cutscenes for the game leaked online. And if you guys remember, we got the game in March. So we had to go onto YouTube and watch everyone in Japan leak all the cutscenes. And that's actually why Sakurai no longer put these high-res cutscenes into Wii U and 3DS and removed the story mode because he was concerned that the gamers out there would just leak them again.
That's why. Oh my god.
Yeah. At least he came back with Ultimate. And Ultimate, we got a lot more story stuff, and it was a multi-release because times have changed. But yeah, crazy stuff. Before I throw it back to you, Jake, I do want to point out, we didn't talk about it, but I think we should touch on it real quick if you guys would allow me. It was announced yesterday that there are some Xbox 360 games that are disappearing from the Xbox 360 store forever. And these games are they're like pretty important titles to the identity of the 360, in my opinion.
I'd say Fusion Frenzy,
Blue Dragon.
I mean, Mass Effect 2, Assassin's Creed, I think, is also on the list. Assassin's Creed 3 and Black Flag, I think.
So are these just going from the 360, and you can still buy them on the other Xbox store?
You can only buy them on the other Xbox store if they came out on the Xbox console appropriately. So if there was an Xbox Series S, X, or One port, you could pick it up. So in the case of Assassin's Creed 4, you could probably just buy the Xbox One port of that and be fine. But if you want to, pick up Lost Odyssey, for instance, or Blue Dragon, really rare RPGs.
Sure.
Those are the last games they should be taking off because they were, they were
Why
staples.
are they doing that? Like, what is the reason that companies do this? I don't understand. Like, I just don't get it.
I think it's a combination of paying royalty fees every quarter to keep your game on their store. That's probably the biggest one. But yeah, I mean, literally, freaking Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey are like these really rare RPGs that, let alone like on the 360, that no one really had the opportunity to play. And the crazy thing is that the same thing is happening via PS Plus in May. They're going to stop including games retroactively on the PS Plus going forward in May. So
that's
the PlayStation Collection is
that's a curated list of 20 PS4 games that are no longer being made available for free. That's different to that.
Oh,
But if you get them, if you activate
My
them
bad.
now, you add them to your library,
Yeah,
you will
exactly.
still have them. when
Gotcha.
that-
The articles I read made it seem like they were also going away forever.
No, because it's like God of War and Bloodborne, so they're
Oh, then yeah. In that case, ignore that.
I wouldn't put it past Sony to delete Bloodborne though, right?
Yeah, at this point, God.
Yeah, why not? Let's just get rid of it. No one's asking.
We should do a whole special edition podcast, Gerard, on stuff like this because I find this stuff fascinating. I was talking about it even with the new GoldenEye release and how it's weirdly released through Nintendo Switch Online, Xbox Game Pass, or if you have the rare replay, but only the digital edition.
Yeah.
What?
bizarre.
It's so odd, and like ownership and digitalness is something.
And the fact that Xbox, the platform that has the superior online play, does not have online play, and Nintendo that has the online play, but it sucks balls, is the one that gets the online play. It's fascinating.
Even like Redfall today was announced that it's always online. So
Always online, baby.
if you one day Redfall will become unplayable unless they patch it to make it playable in perpetuity, which I mean, probably not going to do that. But I mean, it's just Rumbleverse this week was delisted or not
6
delisted.
months, man. Yeah.
But, Rumbleverse is a battle royale wrestling game that's lasted for 6 months, and it's published by Epic on the Epic Games Store. And rather than try and release it on Steam in the hope of giving it another crack, they're just deleting the game. It wraps up like next month, and the game will be unplayable. It's such a waste.
Such a bummer.
It's such a all that work that goes into that. It's like, just release it on Steam. Maybe it doesn't work. And someone's made the point as well that replying to me on Twitter, they're like, "Oh, look, server costs and whatever," and that's fair. Like, I understand there's costs to porting, and maybe they just look at the dollars and cents and say, "Well, it's not worth it." Fair enough. But if there's a chance it could work and the dollars could line up, like Epic could sling them a little bit of cash to maybe keep this game alive. You know, they just have to like swallow their pride and be willing to put it on Steam. And it's a shame that's not going to happen. So,
If you had told me that Rumbleverse almost lasted as long as G4, I would have told you were crazy. I thought the game would have lasted way longer. But we debuted Rumbleverse on G4, and a year later, it's gone.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Fucking hell.
True bummer.
Well, how do we end on a positive note?
I guess I shot ourselves in the foot, guys. I'm sorry.
No. I think we can end it. I fucking missed you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy we're back.
We have had really long conversations about where we're going with this podcast and what we're doing. And it's always exciting.
But that makes it sound like we're thinking about canning it.
We're phasing me out. I'm not working.
14 episodes and that's it.
It's an always online podcast. You need an internet connection to listen to it. This podcast will be supported by Denuvo very soon. But you're right. We have had big conversations about stuff, and just because we're really excited about it, and it continues to be a really long-term thing for us. Like, we don't think about it in terms of like the next few months. We think about the next few years and beyond, and it's been cool to think in those terms and come up with cool stuff. We've got some ideas cooking in the background as well, stuff we can't share yet, but it's happening. Yeah. And man, it's just good to be back and hanging out with you guys.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Also, to the people listening, whether it's through the Skill Up channel, the YouTube comments, or social media, or the podcast reviews, the feedback's like genuine and good. Yeah. And with certain things, with certain episodes, like formatting, even like when we did our interesting thing with the Matt Booty from Xbox interview,
people love that.
People we were like, oh, this is different. We're not sure how people are going to like it, and we got genuine good feedback about it. Yeah. And even just alterations to that if we were to do that again. That like people. You guys are smart, so thank you.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you guys are smart, my podcast mates. Thank you for being here.
Yes.
Very much appreciate you all. This is Friends Per Second. We're here every other week on your RSS feeds for podcast and hosted graciously video version on the Skill Up YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram at Jake Baldino. You can find me on YouTube at Jake Baldino and Game Ranks. Lucy, where can the folks find you?
I'm on Gamespot, and I do bad memes and jokes in the name of video games. No, I'm Lucy James Games and everything.
Ralph?
I am Le Shill Up. You will find me here on this channel if you are watching on the Shill Up channel. Otherwise, on Twitter still, unfortunately. So I want to follow your example and get off Twitter, Jake, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
You can't. You degenerate.
Can't.
You can't.
Can't. So bad I can't. It's terrible.
Gerard.
I'm Gerard the Completionist. You can find me on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, That One Video Gamer. You can find me on my Let's Play channel again, Super Beard Brothers, as well as you can find me on Twitch at The Completionist, Twitter, Completionist, Instagram, The Completionist. I'm just the bearded homeless guy that's associated with being The Completionist.
Nice.
Thank you guys out there for listening. Onward to 2023. We're friends per second. Tie your shoes and go to bed.
He said it.
I said it. We're back.
Mr.
We're back.
Line,
It's
baby.
real.